And I'm gonna welcome people in. Okay, can you turn your camera off just until we start everything? Okay. Hey, welcome everybody. Come on in. Come on into the Zoom room. Thank you for coming today. I'm really, really excited that you made time for this before a holiday weekend. And I'm going to wait just a couple of seconds and until everybody can get in here. We've got a couple hundred people already in, actually. So that means to me that this is a good topic. So I am so excited to present this to you. If you could drop in the chat where you're coming from, I just like to get to know where people are coming from, maybe how you saw information about this event, and we will get started right on time so that we can finish right on time and you can think about this and start sharing it with other people. But great, wonderful. We're seeing a lot of people. Great, fantastic. Love that you're coming in. Love that you want to hear about this. I will do a very brief introduction. I'm doing this as a public service to people because I do virtual events. I've been doing them for years. And I have encountered some excellent speakers, but three really important topics have resonated with me over the past 2 years. And I pulled them together in what is like the epitome of an event that I would want to go to learn about. And these are the people that I trust, who I think you can learn from. And they make things very clear and very simple. And these are complicated concepts that I have come to learn about. And I think if I can learn it, anybody can learn it. So I actually asked my very good friend, Laura Dahanis. She is an excellent tax strategist for business owners with an annual revenue of 10 million and above. And she's a tough cookie, and she's great with taxes and she's great with business owners, but I'm handing this event off to her because I'm not usually the one in front of the camera. She's much more polished than I am. So I'm going to let her take it away and introduce our first speaker. Laura, thank you for doing this for me today. And everybody, I hope you get a lot of value out of this and enjoy.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Cynthia's actually in Germany. She's outside of California today. So hence the different background here with Cynthia. So welcome everyone. I see we have people from all over the place, and welcome. Again, I am just a neutral person and we have Tanisha here, the speaker. I just want to talk for just a moment about the event and me coming as, I'm not a speaker teaching you all of this. I'm here to learn the same as every one of us. So I know you all know the title. I'm really, really curious before we get started. I always have like an end goal in mind of what brought you here. We're going to do a quick poll. I think it's going to give every speaker a chance to see who are we talking to? What brought us here? Is it the business owner? Am I worried about, the labor market? Am I worried about my investments? Am I worried about my wealth? Am I diversified enough? Right? So these are really valid questions that all of us have in a different way, and we have a different angle looking at this. So we have a quick poll. Let me see if I can do the poll. If I can do the poll, Cynthia, can you do the poll really quick? I just want to
Yes.
see if we can get that in. I think that would be very valuable. Hi, Diane from Canada and Louisiana and Metro Detroit. We have a TARDIS member here. We have a couple of different people. Orange County, yay. I don't like the weather. I'm kidding. Okay, so we have the poll. So the poll says, what brought you here today? If you can do me a big favor, I think this is for all of us to know and to service you the best way we can. The first answer is, I'm a business owner and need to understand more about what's coming. Labor, AI, all the issues that we're going to talk today. I'm an investor and I see opportunity. I'm worried about the future of my income, or none of the above. If you can do that and vote, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much for voting. And then we'll see the results. And if Cynthia, you could share those with us. So we'll give just a couple more seconds to do that. Very good. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, let's close the poll. Just last chance. Just pick something. What brought you here today? And Cynthia, if we can get the results of the poll. Okay, so most of the people, we have 38 or 21% saying, I'm a business owner and need to know what's coming up my way. Actually, that was the second. The first category is I'm an investor and I see opportunity. 54% of you are investors looking at what's happening with my wealth and how diversified am I and all of that, which is great. So I think Tanisha will be really happy to see that because she's in the wealth building space. So we're going to go forward. I think this is a great, great insight. And thank you so much for participating. You guys are great. Good morning. Did I say good morning? Good morning, everyone. So we have Tanisha Souza, an amazing lady. She's going to talk about AI and income protection, how to really stay ahead of the shift. I'm here to learn. So she's a great, great person. She's the founder and CEO of TARDIS Wealth Strategies. She's up in Honolulu. So it's 5, 6 o'clock, a.m. for her. So give her, we can't send her coffee, but we can send you some, all the, energy. So you can and saying thank you for being with us today. And again, what she's going to talk about is how AI is disrupting the workforce and why creating leveraged income has never been more urgent than today. And practical strategies to build resilient passive income streams, which we all want, and protect our families, our businesses from sudden labor market shifts. I am all set for that. So again, welcome Tanisha as a founder of TARDIS Wealth Strategies, creator of the Income Snowball System. And for 20 plus years, Tanisha has helped thousands and thousands of business owners and families really master cash flow and accelerate financial independence. Tanisha, you have the floor. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Laura. I'm honored, and what an intro. That was that was pretty awesome. All right, I am going to see if I can share my screen here. Hold on one second. All right, I hope you're all very excited about this whole conference because I think it's phenomenal. I'm excited to hear from all the speakers that we have here. All right, so I hope everybody can see my screen. Does that look good? All right, we will dive right in. I want to be able to give you guys enough time to absorb all this information. It's kind of a lot, very technical, but I think you'll get a lot out of it. And yeah, this is new for I think for a lot of people. I've been sharing this with a few people close to us, and I shared a little bit with some of my clients, but you guys are the first to hear this entire presentation about AI and income protection. All right, so let's talk about how to stay ahead of the shift. So let's talk about just for briefly who I am. Let's touch on that for a second. I know that Laura already introduced me, but I want you to understand that I'm someone who knows this information. And I want you to know that I'm someone with boots on the ground who understands what's happening in this arena. So my name is Tanisha Souza. I grew up in San Jose, California. That's the heart of Silicon Valley, which is where we see a lot of the AI stuff coming from. My mother spent most of her life, most of her career in the IT space, right? In the IT industry as a computer software engineer. And many of my friends come from that field, actually. And I've also founded and I own several successful companies. I'm a US patent holder, a lawyer. I graduated from UC Berkeley with my undergraduate degree, and I have my law degree from USC. So, a lot of background. Of course, I'm from California originally. So, a lot of background in this arena. The patent I have is on software. So, I'm not going to talk about that today. That's not really why I'm here. But I am an investor. And I've been an investor for 20 years, and I've over 20 years, actually. It's been about 27 years. For 20 years, I've used my patent to teach people how to create passive income with the income they already have with my company TARDIS that Laura mentioned to you. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today, I'm going to talk about AI and how, if it hasn't already done this, how it will affect your income in the future. It could be for the positive or the negative. And this is something that I've been following for some time, primarily because of my business, TARDIS Wealth Strategies. Like I said, I own several companies, but this one is, I think, more relevant. In our 40 minutes together today, I'm going to show you what you can expect when it comes to AI in the job market and in the business markets. And we're going to talk about how you can prepare for this. and I want you to know this doesn't have to be a doom and gloom conversation, but it does have to be a conversation. And I will have some ideas and some practical things that you can start doing immediately. So to understand this, we're going to connect some dots. So let's start off with data centers. Now, maybe you've read about them or heard about them. Why do we need them? What's a data center anyway? If you're not familiar with IT or the things that I'm talking about or AI, you may not know what that is. So there are 4 reasons. AI is incredibly power and compute hungry. So every chatbot you see, every virtual assistant and ChatGPT engine, it needs to use power. And the more companies integrate AI into their business operations, the more power we're going to need. And that's where data centers come in. So the US is the backbone of Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Meta. These are going to be the providers of AI. And AI-driven business transformation is happening across every industry, and companies are actually rushing to implement it. And we're basically in a global race to see who can do this, the fastest, the best. And that's why you see all these wars between OpenAI and Meta and things like that. Now, I mentioned that my mother was a computer software engineer. She doesn't do that anymore. She's semi-retired. But when she was doing that most of my life, she worked for Hewlett Packard for about 30 years. She worked for Fujitsu for, I think, 10 years, eBay, a lot of the companies in the Bay Area, the big companies. And so, I grew up and understanding all of this, the Silicon Valley language, what they're doing, what to expect. I knew some things before things happened because of my mom's background. So just to kind of give you more of an idea of why I know some of this stuff. Now, the United States is building these data centers at a super, super fast rate. This is the beginning of the AI industrial revolution, and data centers are the new factories. So if you can think about the industrial revolution from the past, the factories and how people built things, well, this is the new factory. So you can see that the projected growth of AI-driven data center capacity in the US from 2024 last year all the way to 2030, 5 years from now, you can see where we are today and where we're going. So just last year, it was, you barely saw any lift. Maybe, if you look at the capacity, it's more than doubled. And in 2026, next year, it will have tripled. And it's just going to keep growing exponentially until we see this massive swing by 2030. And so what I'm going to talk about is what I anticipate happening over the next 5 years. And it's not a guess or a guesstimate. It's really based on what is actually happening right now, what they're planning. And so I want to share with you what they're doing. So we're building data centers that will then offer incredible power that will enable companies to use artificial intelligence more cheaply. So the cheaper it gets, the better. So data centers offer more AI capability, cheaper scalable intelligence, and then we see mass business adoption of AI. So it makes companies a lot more profitable. So I'm curious to know if we have any business owners out there, or we have any people out there, how many of you are currently using AI? I'm curious. I'd like to see if you would just put in the chat, how many of you are using AI right now? In some capacity. Okay. Yeah. So you can see that a lot of people use AI. There's still people that are not using it, but a lot of people are using it in some capacity. We see students using it. My daughters who are college students. One of my daughters is a college student. She is one of the people that uses AI quite a bit for studying, for taking notes, all that kind of stuff. So we're seeing it being used in colleges, in high schools, in businesses, etc. Now, it's not a matter of if they will implement AI to replace workers. They will, right? So who's doing this first? That's really the first question, is who's doing this first, and how will that impact you, and what can you do about it? So the first is large businesses. These are businesses with huge research budgets that are adopting the most quickly. So you can see that the ones that make over $30 billion, those are the ones that are doing this the fastest, the biggest, right? They're implementing it all over the place. 10 to 30 billion, they're next. 500 million to 10 billion, they're next. And then we see the ones that are under 500 million. So it trickles down, but they want to learn as quickly as possible how to use and deploy AI. They're the first adopters. They want a huge productivity boost. So you can assume, and of course it's obvious and it makes perfect sense, that these companies, especially the ones from Silicon Valley, they're the ones that are going to be the first adopters. A lot of them are creating the AI technology, and of course, if they're creating it, they're going to adopt it. But not only that, all of the businesses around them, ones that we use, a lot of the companies that we use for our business are located there, and they're also using it. So in most of we use Office 365 that has Copilot. We use Salesforce. Salesforce actually uses Einstein, and now it has Agentforce. There's so many different major companies in that space that are using it, but those are the huge companies that are using it first, and they're adopting it. So the four industries leading adoption are IT, finance, professional services, and manufacturing. So right now we're hearing what Stanford AI calls the canary in the coal mine. So they did this entire study on what's happening, and actually there's lots of companies doing this. So I'm sure you've probably seen the study that Microsoft did about the 40 industries that are most likely to be disrupted by AI and the 40 that are least likely. We're not going to go into that in this discussion, but I want to show you at least the four industries leading the adoption, and then we'll go down and you'll be able to see how it affects other industries as well. So these four industries, IT, finance, professional services, manufacturing, are leading the charge. And this is what it looks like. First, IT is restructuring, coding, and customer support. So this is why you're seeing layoff numbers starting to come from Silicon Valley, for example. So Microsoft, Cisco, Intel, this trend is going to continue. Like I said, we use Microsoft 360. If you are using any kind of technology, like for your CRMs and things like that, and they're from any of the big companies that come out of there, you're going to see more of these major layoffs. Here's another one in finance. Morgan Stanley, they're laying off 2,000 people in a shift toward AI-driven efficiency. Citigroup and Goldman Sachs have announced anticipated reductions of up to 200,000 jobs over the next 3 to 5 years. Professional services, the big four accounting firms are laying people off, right? So PricewaterhouseCoopers let go of 1,500 employees. Workforce rebalancing is already starting. That highlights that up to 50% of jobs in audit, tax, and advisory could be eliminated within 3 to 5 years due to AI automation. And if you think about it, the reason why is because when you're looking at things like call centers or customer support that have routine inquiries automated with chatbots and voice agents, you don't need to have people sitting at a computer answering questions, even if they're overseas, right? Before we used to, use customer service, or we need to change our reservation or whatever it is, and we'd be talking to somebody potentially in another country. Now, we're eliminating that need because we have customer support that's so easily done through AI. Same thing with coding and IT tasks. I don't know about you, but like I said, I have a lot of friends in the industry that are in the, computer science industry. And that was the field that everyone was telling their children to get a degree in. And now it's very difficult to get a job. What we're seeing is with Gen Z, for example, they're graduating college, and there are millions of them that cannot get a job. So when we're looking at IT coding tasks like debugging code, reduces the need for junior engineers, back office automations, all of that. So the reason why these big firms, again, are first is not only their R&D budgets, but the digital infrastructure and the scale, right? They have the ability to realize these cost savings immediately. The sooner they can implement, the faster they can be more profitable. Okay, and who doesn't want to be more profitable, whether you're a small business or a large one, of course. Okay, then there's phase two. So we talked about phase one. Phase two is coming quickly, and that's next year, 2026, right? We're in the middle of 2025 right now. 26 is coming up real fast. So they're going to move from pioneer and prove cases, and and those practices will become commodities, basically, meaning it's going to be easy to deploy it in various ways throughout the company. Okay, and so we're talking about knowledge work, report drafting, research summaries, compliance checks, creative work, marketing copy, video editing, design templates. Okay, and I'm going to give you a couple of real life examples. So I wrote a book that was an Amazon bestseller. It's available globally, and so it was, it did very well. I was seeking out someone to do my audiobook when I authored this book. And this is before I knew, much about AI and all that. So at least, I mean, I knew about AI, but I just didn't know it was capable of doing some things that it can do today. So I was out looking to hire a company to do my audiobook, and they were going to hire voice actors. There's a lot of work that had to be done. It was going to take 4 weeks to do it and all of this. And so it's going to be, thousands of dollars. Fast forward to today, when now there are companies like 11 Labs that can take my voice, and this is what I actually ended up doing, and that can take my voice, clone it, and actually record the entire book for me in my own voice. So I have my own audiobook now, that I only paid, the amount of money for the AI tool, which I think is $50 a month or something like that. So again, it's eliminating certain industries and fields. Creative work is an example. I also used to hire people to do my video editing, my videography for my my ads, say like a book ad or something like that. And so they would hire actors and they would do, create these videos, and it would be thousands of dollars. Now you can create AI videos where you can't even tell that the people aren't real in some cases, and it's going to get more and more hard to tell as time goes on. So those sorts of things, graphic design, management tasks, what you're going to see are those types of tasks are going away because AI can do it more efficiently and faster. So first, we're going to see augmentation, right? Where AI assists humans. That's kind of where we're at right now. Then we're going to see substitution, where AI replaces the bulk of the work and humans supervise. And they really do need supervision for various reasons. I'm not going to get into the details of that today, but that's part of this whole thing. So phase two is coming quickly, and then we hit it, right? After phase two, what happens? We hit it. It's the tipping point. And that's something really big that's going to happen between 2026 and 2028. And it's not the data centers. It's not the data centers, because those will be complete by that time. The big companies have proven the use cases for AI, and they're building now very quickly. So what is that tipping point? The tipping point is the US workforce employment of small business, employees of small businesses, right? The big businesses, the large companies we've been talking about, they only employ about 54% of the entire United States, so about half, a little over half. The other half is employed by small business owners. So that's what we're talking about. That's when small businesses must adopt AI. The tipping point will expose the second half of the US workforce's livelihood. And this does not mean that every single job is going to be taken by AI at all. I don't believe that's going to happen, okay? There's always going to be people that need to supervise and need to do some other things. And new jobs will emerge from this for sure. Jobs that we haven't even come up with yet. Businesses and careers that we don't even know about, that haven't even come to fruition, will happen. But the tipping point will expose that second half of the US workforce. And so here's what you need to look for. So first of all, think about the market conditions that are forcing this. What's forcing this? First thing is competitive pressure and peer adoption. So when you have a small business who is implementing this, let's say it's a restaurant, right? A restaurant that's employing AI in their business. And you might think, how can a restaurant do that? Well, there's ways that that every business can implement AI. But let's say competitive pressure. They're looking at the restaurant across the street, and they're able to produce, food faster. They're able to get the people fed faster, do it cheaper. They're able to do all of that. And so they're going to have a competitive advantage over the restaurant on this side of the street. So by mid 20, well, where we are right now, 68% of small businesses are already using AI, right? I asked the poll, how many of you guys are using AI? And it turns out that 68%, according to this Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business survey, 68% are already using it. That means that those who are not using it will feel pressure and start losing market share to those that are. If you're in business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's another thing: rising labor costs and talent scarcity. Now we have the fact that, wages are rising, but it's harder to find really good talent. If it's harder to find good talent and labor costs are rising, you're going to look for ways to reduce those costs, right? And so if you can speed up the process, eliminate some of the necessary, the people on your team or whatever it is, then that's probably what's going to happen. For a while we thought, at my company, at TARDIS, one of my companies, we thought that we were going to need to hire another executive assistant. I promoted my executive assistant to operations manager. We thought we needed to hire an executive assistant. Turned out that we were able to utilize AI to take most of that position, what that position would be doing. And so that saved us obviously a lot of money and allows us to do things way faster. Think about it. AI never sleeps. It's operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no vacations, no holidays. It makes it very, very easy to get things done and get things done very quick. Now, they're also embedded AI in tools, right? So we're forced to adopt it. Like I said, we use Salesforce. We have Einstein. Now there's Agentforce, which is a whole different, component that you can use so you can employ agents in your processes. We use Office 365, and that also, we use Teams, we use all of those things, and it has Copilot, which is its own AI tool that's embedded in it. So we're seeing that it's actually there. It's just it's actually already in our tools that we're using. So once the return on investment is clear in peer business, others are going to rush to adopt. We're already seeing that. Then there's also the regulatory and compliance complexity, which is forcing AI adoption as well, because AI can help with tax, HR, privacy, all of that. So when we see that happening, all of that is going to bring us to phase 3. And phase 3 is where higher level of expert and strategic roles will be affected by this. Now, here's how this works. Senior analysts, consultants, portfolio managers, physicians, attorneys, educators, executives will be affected by this. Now, like I said before, I don't believe AI is going to eliminate all these roles, but it will reshape them, augmenting or replacing the structured parts of their expertise. And so the risk is less about jobs vanishing overnight and more about fewer humans being needed per unit of output. For example, one investment analyst empowered by AI could do the work of 5 people, for example, right? So that's what we're talking about. So the jobs most at risk, right? Because we're talking about it is by 2028, approximately 90% of all small businesses will be adopting AI. And that includes, businesses that you would think may not need AI, or how would they be able to use it? Like I mentioned, restaurants, I mean, they can use it for sure. Jobs most at risk are routine, repeatable, process-driven roles like administrative assistants, retail scheduling, claims processing. I used to have, people scheduling my appointments for me. We don't need that anymore, where people can just schedule, your calendar is available and they can pick out those points that you open it up for them for, things like that. Entry-level white-collar positions, junior analysts, paralegals, basic accounting, and then new jobs will emerge. This is what I was talking about. AI oversight, customer-facing creative strategy. There's so many things. I think, when we're talking about cybersecurity, for example, right, that's going to be more important than it was before with AI. And so you need to have AI tools that will be able to combat some of the things that we're anticipating are probably going to happen. But the challenge here is that the speed of job displacement may not, it's probably going to outpace the new jobs, right? Or creating the retraining that people are going to need to change what they're doing. And so those are the things that we have to watch out for and look out for. So here you have it. We're looking at a short time frame and a lot of unprecedented change. So the timeline from 24 to 2030 is early adopters from 2024 to 2025. 2026 to 27, mainstream adoption in small businesses and enterprise functions, and then widespread displacement across back office sectors. It's not limited to white collar. We'll see this in blue collar. I know someone whose uncle worked for, I think it was John Deere, which, is the tractor company, and for I don't know, 30 years or something like that, and he was recently laid off. And part of it had to do with what we're seeing here, this AI industrial revolution. So I know Duolingo laid off hundreds of people, like almost its entire staff. We see Vogue using like AI models and weird stuff. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things happening. But again, this does not have to be doom and gloom. So what's next, right? What's next? Here's what's next. You need a plan. And I want to share with you some things that you can start doing today. And I'm actually going to demonstrate to you what you can do today to help you get ahead of this, to stay ahead of what's coming. Okay. So most people still think that AI won't affect their job or business, or at least not anytime soon. But the truth is, if your job can be written down as a standard operating procedure, then you can be replaced. So if there is a standard operating procedure for your job, you can be replaced. Or if you're not good at using AI, right? You don't want to use AI. AI is ugly to you. You don't want to have anything to do with it. Will they want to keep you? Because they will adopt it. And those who do embrace it and move forward with it are going to be a lot more effective in their jobs than those who don't. So there's a lot to think about here. There's a lot to think about. All right, here's a snapshot of just some of the careers that are on the chopping block. It doesn't matter if you have a college degree. You can see that bank tellers, insurance agents, finance analysts, radiologists, technical writers, graphic designers, tax preparers, paralegals, loan officers, those are very high risk. And the reason is because they are transactional or rules-based, or you can basically get the information you need online. And think about it, most people just take bank tellers. I mean, how many of us actually go into a bank these days? I mean, I rarely do. Like, it has to be something kind of major or catastrophic or something for me to have to actually physically go into a bank. Most of the things I do online. And then I also use an app, right? If I don't do it online on my laptop, I will do it on my phone. And that's how most people transact business these days. So you're going to see less and less need for actual bank tellers. Insurance agents, right? If you're looking for, your claims, or, you get into a car accident with Geico, a lot of that is being automated these days. And so quotes, claims, rule-based evaluations, those things, I mean, it's making it so much easier for people to be able to self-serve. Finance analysts, it's really financial modeling, quantitative modeling, forecasting, and AI can do that a lot more effectively. Now, here's something kind of interesting. This one's kind of crazy. I saw this article that said that, I read a lot of this, I study a lot of this, but that AI outperformed 95% of doctors on the medical exams. And so, which is crazy, but it's just showing you that it's able to synthesize the available information about patients, symptoms and all of the, the background history of the patient to come up with the diagnosis more accurately than doctors. So, we can see that things are shifting, things are changing, and we're going to see some changes. The ones that are least likely to be affected are things like the skilled trades, therapists, counselors, even nurses and consultants, strategists, things like that. Those are medium or lower risk because of the trust, the emotional intelligence, things like that. So if you're in those careers, you have a little bit more time, but like I said, we're really still talking about a 5-year time frame for you to really get used to this AI stuff and really start using it to your advantage. Now that I've given you that to think about, I want you to think about how you can prepare for this. And what I realized in my 20s was that wealthy people, and I'm there now, and been there for a while, so I can say it with confidence that they don't rely on jobs for their income, right? They don't rely on even their business for income, right? Their business brings in the income, but then they make sure that they're building wealth on top of that. So it's not reliant on, the economy or, whatever the situation is happening. They rely on cash flow from assets, but most people don't have cash flow systems. Whoops. Uh-oh, what happened? Okay. Can you guys see my computer?
Yes,
Okay,
I can see
great.
your screen.
Okay. All right. My computer just went blank for a second. Okay. So what I realized in my 20s is that I needed to have cash flow. I needed to have passive income from investments. That's what the wealthy do. But most people don't have those kinds of systems in place. Most people are high earners. There's a lot of Americans um, that are high earners, and even people who don't, they are basically just one paycheck, one layoff away from losing their lifestyle. And I'm talking about doctors. I'm talking about lawyers, people that I used to work with. That's what I'm talking about. So it's not really looking good for most people. 40% of Americans are asset poor. 49% live paycheck to paycheck, and 11%, a small slice, is considered truly financially stable. So the real threat is not only jobs, it's the loss of income that you don't control. So, so my recommendation is that you prepare for this, and that's the gloomy part, right? But the good part is you have time. Right now, you have time to prepare, and so do your children. If you have kids like me, I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, and one of them's like, she's going to be out of college, in a couple of years. The other one's going into college next year. She's a high school senior. They're looking at all of this that's happening. They're like, oh my gosh, mom, like what's going on? Fortunately, what I've been doing is teaching them exactly what I'm sharing with you today. I'm telling them, get into this AI thing. I'm telling them to create alternate streams of income now. Imagine if I knew what I knew, what I know now, if I knew this when I was in college, it would have been a totally different situation. So this can help your children that are entering the workforce or working now. Okay, so here's the thought. AI can be your competition or it can be your leverage. Use the same disruptive tech to build your freedom. Lay the tracks now to create a way to support yourself with systems that build cash flow for you. You can use it to accelerate wealth. And there's tons of ways of doing this. I'm sure you've seen a lot of it on the internet. You can start businesses using AI. You can stock trade using AI. There's lots of things that you can do, but I'm going to show you an example of how I'm going to show you some examples of how it can be used to invest now. It can be used right now to invest smarter. So here's some passive investment income. And what I mean by passive is not active. So stock trading to me is a little bit active. And so I don't consider that really passive, but that is a way, that is something, if you wanted to do that, that's something that you can do to create that safety net from AI. If you're good at that and that's something you're interested in doing, and that's once you want that to be your job, you could do that. But what you need is job-proof income, which earns whether you're working or not. Independent of employers, no company controls your cash flow. This is the benefit of this. Resilient to automation. AI can't replace dividends, rent, or interest. And it creates a reliable safety net and provides stability in an uncertain job market. So when we're talking about this and we're going, okay, well, how can I use AI to my advantage? I'm going to show you a question that came up with my clients, right? I have some clients that have rental properties, for example, and my clients are pretty well diversified into many different passive income streams. So most of them have multiple streams of passive income from various different types of investments of their choice. But we have some clients that have rentals or ones that want to, and here is what this is the problem they raised. I want to invest in real estate, but if AI takes people jobs, how do I know my tenants will still be able to pay rent? So the question is, we have to think like the wealthy do, right? They have assets that create cash flow. And if you have an asset and you're like worried about the cash flow, or you're thinking, I want to buy an asset, but I'm worried about the cash flow because of this AI stuff, there's ways that you can use the AI to solve for that. Okay, there's ways you can solve for that. So let me go into this demo here. I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull up my trusty dusty ChatGPT, because I'm sure most of you actually use or have used ChatGPT. So let's get into that. I'm going to pull this up. And I want to give you a live demo of what you can do here. Okay. All right. So I've got a lot of tools here on my left, but let's look at, I'm gonna show you what you can do today. These are some ideas. So if you have that situation, if you're in that situation, you're like, I'm interested in real estate. And I'm going to tell you right now that what I'm going to share with you can be translated to other types of investments. It doesn't have to be real estate. It could be income funds. It could be mortgage notes. It could be any kind of passive income investment that you purchase and it produces monthly income for you or quarterly income for you or whatever. So you can use this same idea to do this. So we're gonna do one here. So I'm gonna have it talk, I'm gonna talk to it. So first, what I wanted to do is I wanted to help me by acting as my rental real estate research assistant. So what we want to do is identify AI resilient tenant profiles. So let's start with that. And this sometimes takes a little bit of time, so I'll share with some other things with you while it thinks, because sometimes it takes a minute to think. So act as my rental real estate research assistant. Use publicly available information to research and identify strong rental markets. First, list careers least likely to be replaced by AI in 2030 with a brief explanation of why. Provide sources for your reasoning. All right, so we're going to let it think for a second, and we're going to let it do its thing. Now, while it's doing that, I want you to realize that every single problem that you're looking at as far as investing is concerned, it's not always going to be solved by AI, but you are going to be able to have some alternatives and options, including you can use AI to do research for you, like I'm sharing with you right now, help you build criteria for investments, things like that. And there's just so much you can do to enable you to really be in the right position. Now, imagine how this gives you an advantage over other investors. So if you, for example, are interested in rentals, and that can be a hot market sometimes, right? We know that interest rates are a little bit higher than typical, but there's still ways that you can actually reduce the, actually make it so that you have a higher cash flow, even if interest rates are higher. And there's ways to use AI to do that as well. So let me tell you what I've done with mine. I actually have I have a multifamily property rental assistant that I use because I like to buy commercial real estate. What that tool does, and I built it in ChatGPT, what it does is it helps me to quickly identify rental properties that I would want to buy. So I've built my criteria into the back of this tool. It's sitting right here. I built my criteria into the back of the tool so it knows what I'm looking for. When a realtor gives me a property with all the financial information, I just put it in it and it spits out a result. It gives all the checklists of whether or not this meets my criteria. Then I can go back and I can use other tools and say, okay, what if we financed like this? Or what if I got an interest only or an ARM loan and then refinanced it after 5 years? Or what if I did this? Or what if I did that? And it will give me a 5-year projection or a 30-year projection on each property. Now, I have to tell you, this used to take me, it used to take me close to, I don't know, I think it was maybe, it would take me a week sometimes to do just research on maybe 2 or 3 properties. Now I can do it in minutes, and it's just so much more fun. Now, if you're thinking investing is hard or investing is difficult or any of those kinds of things, and we'll just do this so that we can actually wait until that's done. But in case you're wondering, you're like, investing seems hard, investing seems really complicated, it seems difficult. It used to feel that way for me too, but now I get excited because of AI, because AI actually helps speed up everything that I'm doing and makes it so much faster for me to do what I used to be able, it used to take me a week to do, or multiple days, or at least 8 hours to research, I'm able to do in minutes. So think about how many properties you could go through. I remember Robert Kiyosaki, I'm a fan of his. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he said, you have to go through 100 properties. You have to research 100 properties before you find one good one. Well, if that's the case, then that sometimes takes people months and months, maybe a year, before they find one good property. Now I'm able to do it so much faster just because of what AI can do. All right, so it's still researching right now, but it should come up with a result pretty quick. So a few more things that I want you to know, and we'll kind of dive into this, and we'll get back to this in just a second. Let me just get back to my, let's get back to this here. Okay, whoops. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so we'll get back to the demo in a second. Here's what you can use AI to do. Analyze deals, automate cash flow models, forecast market changes, create custom investing tools like we're doing at TARDIS. So the same tech that's taking incomes can build yours. You don't need to become a tech genius. You just need to learn how to think like one. So most people will wait until their income's gone. You have the chance to build a second one while you're ahead. And so I'm going to share with you some additional resources that I'm just going to give them to you, right? There's a couple of resources that I'm going to give you. One of them is an AI real estate research checklist that starts with what I just shared with you today, that first prompt, and gives you several other prompts that you can use that will actually help you research real estate investments. So whatever market you're looking at, for example, whatever area you're looking at, it can help you to locate employment hubs, analyze local rental demand, do all of those things. And I also want to share with you a white paper. So a white paper that I wrote about the opportunities with AI. And so there's lots of opportunities here, ways that you can actually generate income. I talk about other ways, such as besides investing, things like, building businesses that relate to AI or really solving people's problems in those arenas as well. So you can look at those as well, and that also makes a huge difference. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to share this with you real quick, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Okay, this is the results. Okay, so registered nurses and nurse practitioners, physicians and surgeons, home health and personal care aides, mental health clinicians, skilled trades, etc. Okay, so now we're looking at, let's say that we wanted to do traveling nurses. Okay, and if we wanted to use traveling nurses and do midterm rentals instead of long-term rentals or short-term rentals, like maybe for 6 months or 9 months as they're traveling, you can look at specific employment hubs around the big hospitals, and you can have it do that research. So I've actually put all of this out for you, and I'm giving it to you for free so that you can see exactly step by step how to do this for rental properties, if that's something you're interested in. But again, this can be translated to other types of investments. If real estate's not your jam, it doesn't have to be. And so I wanted to show you how it gives you this information, and it gives you sources so that it's not just making things up. Sometimes AI does make things up, by the way. But my tools have helped me to, analyze deals faster, It's helped me to do just pretty much get those deals, get my hands on those deals quicker. And it's enabled me to just be a lot more efficient and make more money. And it makes it so much more fun. Like I said, the least work, the less work I have to do, the better. All right. Last thing. Okay. At Tardis, we've been teaching passive income building strategies for 22 years. We recognize that, this is our time. We're teaching people how to expedite this with AI and how to create streams of passive income so that by 2027, you have backup income streams in place. So join us for 3 days in September, where we'll work for an hour every day for 3 days to build 3 tools that will help you use AI with your investing, whatever that looks like. I mean, this is going to be an adventure over the next 5 years. And I'm excited about what's to come because I'm already prepared for it. And I want to help you prepare too. So whether you work with charges or not, this is cutting edge information. Most people are going to wait until their income's gone. You have a chance to build a second one while you're ahead. Thank you for your time today. You can use that QR code to register for our event and also get those tools that I talked about. I want you to have the white paper that tells you different ways to use AI to create passive income and the AI real estate research checklist. Those are bonuses I'm giving away completely for free just to help you. You can start using it right away to start building passive income. Thank you for your time. I cannot wait for the next speaker. This is an amazing event. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tanisha. Wasn't that great, everyone? I know you guys are blowing up the chat. Let me see. Tanisha, would you stop the screen share, or you can just leave it for a moment? Maybe you can paste a link in the chat. Can you do that? If people still want to grab the QR code, I think that would be great.
Yes. Let's see.
Yeah, very nice.
I'll grab it,
Yeah.
Laura. I'll put it in your
Very good. So thank you so much, Tanisha. Just to fully kind of, not fully, but just a minute to recap. What I really want to share with you is that there is hope. The sky is not falling. It's not the end of the world. We look at this as I was at a conference in LA many, many years ago, and Roger Hamilton said something amazing that stuck with me for so many years. He said something, the economies of the world, they always have waves. And after his presentation, what stuck with me was that I missed a wave. And I remember my fear of missing out of I will never miss a wave. So when something is coming, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels like it's really pushing us to go through an expansion, something that you might think it's against your principles, it doesn't seem right. Somebody will lose a job because of AI. If either you agree or you don't agree, nobody's going to ask for your opinion or my opinion. So what I encourage you to do is just to have an open mind. And you people are so amazing. I think this is the most amazing group of people in the chat. You are so far ahead. I think these are the people that are on the wave. So if we're on the wave, we're gonna literally ride with the wave and just see what the new economy is gonna look like. Because government policy, which we're gonna talk about today, so exciting. So all of this is gonna merge together to help and assist the whole economy of the United States and of the world. We're just like two immersed together as a group, as economies. So thank you so much, Tanisha. This was so amazing. I love the real examples, and I think everyone had something to take away from this, either in their business, in their investments. What do I do? How do I diversify? Thank you so much for the world of knowledge that you just brought to us. That was amazing. Again, thank you. So I guess you follow Tanisha and just go and learn. Again, nobody's selling you anything. If you're thinking this is just educational, just take what you can from it. If you connect with the person and you want to reach out to them, or you want to go and just engage with them in any level, do so. Just take it at the, get your gut feeling and just go with it and reach out to people that you really engage with. So thank you so much, Tanisha. And thank you everyone for being here today. So this is amazing. Isn't this great? I know. So again, we're going to the next speaker. I know we're going really, really fast, and we have something really amazing. So James, if you're up, if you want to bring the camera. So we have James Lavish, who's going to talk to us about how the Genius Act and the stablecoin adoption and rewriting the rules of money. what these shifts mean for, you as business owners and us as business owners and investors, how Bitcoin is being legitimized and practical moves to really preserve our purchasing power. Again, I want you to welcome James Lavish. And again, he is the co-founder of the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund and the author of The Informationist. If you did not sign up for that, that newsletter is amazing. Former hedge fund manager who now educates large audiences. You probably have seen him around everywhere. And just give him a warm welcome. Can we say hi to James?
Thank
How
you,
are
Laura.
you?
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you very fine.
Great.
Very good. So I'll let you take over, James. And
Yeah.
again, you'll blow us mind with some charts, I'm sure, about the Bitcoin. So today is a mind-blowing day.
My camera seems to be on its own here, so it's a good thing I have a presentation. But so let's first let me see if I can bring this up and get you guys get this sorted out. Didn't want to do it in the middle of Tanisha's presentation, so let's see.
And if it works.
Share my screen.
Yeah, until you do that, I
There
love
you
you
go.
putting
Can you guys see it?
yeah,
All
you're
right,
putting
great.
questions in the chat. You can do that. We'll have the Q&A at the end. So you can do that. You can use the Q&A button as well. I see you're using both, so it's all fine. Just put your questions in. We'll have time with James at the end. It's gonna, and Tanisha and all the speakers, it's gonna trigger a lot of questions. So James,
take it away. So, well, thank you, Laura, and Cynthia for inviting me here. I am going to talk about the Genius Act a little bit later in the presentation here, but this is some of the presentation. It's kind of I've evolved it since I spoke in Prague about a month and a half ago, but this is an important subject, and it's one that I get asked about all the time about institutional adoption of Bitcoin. And so, as Laura said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm James Lavish. I'm the co-managing partner of the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund now. So I'm a reformed hedge fund manager, and now I'm focused on some emerging assets here. So, but I've been an institutional investor for over 30 years, managing capital from hedge funds and arbitrage to now Bitcoin and macro strategy. And over that time, I've learned one thing above all, and capital always follows incentive. And today we're watching those incentives shift under our feet. What we're going to talk about today is why Bitcoin is not just an asset class, it's an inevitability. Not just because it's trendy, and not because it's digital gold, but because it's a natural response to a financial system that's reaching the limits of its own design. So let's start with a simple question. What happens when the asset you built your entire portfolio on, the ballast of your portfolio, stops working? For decades, the US Treasury, the 10-year US Treasury, was the world's safe asset. It hedged drawdowns, it paid real yield, it helped you meet liabilities. Today, it correlates with equities. It yields less than inflation as measured by the expansion of the money supply, and it adds volatility, not stability. This isn't policy error, it's the policy, the tool the government uses to suppress real rates and manage unsustainable debt loads. The result? Cash and bonds are no longer safe. They no longer keep your portfolio afloat. They're melting in real time, quietly, systemically. And now that the base layer is broken, then everything built on it is at risk. And that risk grows every day. In short, discipline has been replaced by debt dependency. The global economy is now addicted to credit expansion. Total global debt is now $324 trillion. Sovereigns can no longer afford neutral interest rates, let alone restrictive ones. In the US, we're spending over $1 trillion annually just on interest on our federal debt. That's more than defense, and it's more than Medicare. And the response from central banks isn't to deleverage, it's to increase liquidity, to do more QE, to ease collateral terms, to rescue markets again and again. Why? Because we've reached fiscal dominance, where government spending is necessary to drive the economy. Therefore, monetary policy now exists to fund government obligations. This is no longer a cycle, it's a regime. We're in a permanently low rate, high liquidity world, not because it's optimal, but because it's the only path left. So let's get something clear though. Negative real yields aren't a fluke. They're not an error. They're not some post-pandemic anomaly. They're policy, a deliberate feature of a system that's addicted to debt and growth at any cost. The playbook is simple. Governments rack up unsustainable debt. They can't inflate it away overnight, so they suppress real yields. They pay bondholders less than inflation, and they let time do the dirty work. It's simple. Print money, make dollars worth less, pay back debt with cheaper dollars. And it's not a fringe theory either. The IMF itself calls it a subtle form of wealth taxation. And it works beautifully, as long as no one notices, as long as the people don't protest, as long as allocators just go along with the scheme. So why do we have to repress rates in the first place? Why are real yields negative? Because the system does not work without more liquidity. With debt loads so high, the only way out is inflation and money creation. And make no mistake, without more liquidity, the system will simply collapse on itself. This chart shows the global money supply growth since 2000. You can see the acceleration at the 2008 crisis and the vertical move in 2020. Since 2020, we've added nearly 7% a year compounded to the global money supply. For central bankers and treasuries, it's just about survival. Remember that number, 7%. We're going to come back to it. And this is what we mean when we say irresponsibility demands liquidity. More debt, more printing. More bailouts, more printing. More fiscal spending, more printing. And if you know that, you also know this. The purchasing power of fiat is structurally designed to decline. Look at how these move lockstep with each other. And here's the open secret. The system doesn't just tax your income anymore. It taxes your savings quietly, relentlessly, systemically. And this is what ultimately breaks the traditional model. Bonds don't hedge, cash doesn't preserve. The anchor asset becomes the liability. In this environment, the old safe haven playbook is obsolete. You need assets that sit outside this repression loop. And this is now policy. If the base layer is structurally eroding wealth, then allocators have no choice but to rethink what safe even means. Which brings us to the obvious question. What do you own when everything denominated in fiat is quietly melting? That's the question every portfolio manager grapples with every day now. Now, let's talk about the elephant in every institutional portfolio, the safe asset sleeve. This chart shows 30 years of institutional portfolio evolution. In 1994, 85% of capital sat in US fixed income. By 2022, that number had dropped to just 4%. Why? Because safe no longer means productive. Bonds don't hedge, they don't preserve wealth, they don't meet future liabilities. With negative real yields and suppressed coupons, they've become an anchor that drags returns down, not a risk buffer. And so what happens? You're forced to reach into liquids, illiquids, privates, derivatives, and leverage. You build complexity. You increase the duration of your portfolio. You add tracking error, all to chase the same 7% nominal return in a world where global money supply is already growing at 7% per year. So it's the same return target, triple the risk, zero real return. And complexity and risk are doing all the work. Portfolio managers are simply hamsters on the treadmill, and we all know it's not sustainable. With rates back up, bonds have entered again, but will soon be back to 2022 levels. It's all but certainty. So we arrive at the real question. What do you own when everything inside the system is either inflated, illiquid, or guaranteed to lose value in real terms? That's where we begin to shift, not into speculation, but into design fit assets. Assets built for this very problem. And that brings us to the institutional mindset. But it's not that easy for institutions. They cannot simply shift their mindset and adopt a new strategy. Bitcoin maxis, you've seen them online, they like to call these people dinosaurs. But in reality, institutions are just more like massive ocean liners, programmed for a destination. And if the captain, the portfolio manager, wants to take a different path to that destination, he must ask permission from a dozen superiors in a rigid chain of command, which looks like this. So then it's not that they're late, it's that they're slow And it's not that they're slow because they're dumb. They're slow because they're structured to be slow. The job of a pension CIO isn't to chase alpha. It's to meet the intergenerational liabilities that they have through consistent, defensible process. Every decision is accountable to boards, consultants, stakeholders, and as we've seen, to politicians. So if you take a peek at this chart, this is the capital pipeline. What a new asset must pass through just to get considered. Industry research, asset class review, due diligence, committee vetting, board approval, policy documentation, and then ongoing risk management. It takes months, sometimes years, to even reach a decision. And it all starts with ALM, the asset liability management, the institutional North Star. This is matching long-term obligations with asset performance, volatility, and liquidity. An asset must improve the performance, the portfolio's ability to meet those future liabilities. And even so, when a CIO sees a thesis like Bitcoin and has conviction, he still needs model inclusion, consultant endorsement, governance sign-off, and reputational cover. That's a big one. And if it doesn't clear those, it's DOA, dead on arrival. Conviction alone won't get it done. You must navigate the idea through the gauntlet of structure. And that's why Bitcoin hasn't flooded into portfolios yet. Not because it's misunderstood, but because it has to fight its way through this institutional process. That's changing now, though. Bitcoin is winning institutions over and earning an allocation in portfolios. And once it's in, it doesn't leave because now it's policy. Look, institutions don't fear volatility, they price it. What they fear is being the outlier, the CIO who bought Bitcoin and got crushed in one of those drawdowns, even if the math was solid. This is why ideas like Bitcoin take so long to break through. After all, as Keynes said, paraphrased, it's better for your reputation if you fail conventionally than if you succeed unconventionally. And so they wait, they watch, they need a bridge. That right there, that picture, that was me. That was me just a few years ago. So what finally got them off the sidelines? Well, up to last year, Bitcoin faced significant structural barriers. ALM, committee review, fiduciary optics, as we just talked about, and all of that kept Bitcoin on the outside. But this changed with the introduction of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. Once Bitcoin got ETF structure, once it was custodied by BlackRock and Fidelity, traded on the New York Stock Exchange, got the nod of approval from the SEC, and it cleared institutional compliance, then it crossed the institutional Rubicon. It became normalized. It became allocatable. And now that that bridge exists, institutions are already crossing it. Just look at what happened to IBIT. When BlackRock, Fidelity, and Bitwise launched their spot ETFs, it wasn't about convenience, it was about permission. Now a CIO can walk into a boardroom and say, this isn't a fringe trade, it's a compliant product from the world's largest asset managers, and it trades on the New York Stock Exchange, and it sits with our prime broker. That changes everything. Bitcoin didn't become investable when it hit $100,000. It became investable when it hit the institutional compliance stack. And it's not any surprise then that IBIT, BlackRock's spot ETF, is the fastest growing ETF in history, reaching $70 billion in just over a year, 5 times faster than GLD, the previous record holder. So this isn't speculative money, or not just speculative money. It's fiduciary capital that's finally been given the green light. All right, so before we go any further, let's dive a little bit into Bitcoin itself and some of the regulatory drivers that have and will continue to be tailwinds over the long term for Bitcoin. So you've heard the saying that Bitcoin is digital gold, but let's drill a little bit deeper. The reality is that gold is analog money. Bitcoin is becoming digital money. As of now, it's digital capital. Neither gold nor Bitcoin should be dismissed. They are not mutually exclusive, and they have different benefits and risks. Both are scarce assets and sound money. But Bitcoin has emerged in this quickly digitizing financial world. Institutions are now learning that Bitcoin is not just digital gold, it's monetary architecture built for a world of endless mistrust, constant overreach, and oppressive inflation. It has no central issuer, no credit risk, no dilution. Its monetary policy is embedded in its code. Only 21 million Bitcoin will ever be created. Full stop. It clears 24/7, it's borderless, it's programmable, and it's neutral. And in a multipolar world where sovereigns are questioning the dollar system and seeking neutral reserves, Bitcoin is the first digital asset that offers true and trustless neutrality. All right, so you hear all kinds of words describing Bitcoin like decentralized, immutable, divisible, portable, scarce. If you have been resistant to learning about or accepting Bitcoin as a legitimate asset, I urge you to reconsider. It took me years to figure this out, and it could have taken me hours. But let's do a simple one-on-one on these. So I'll make it quick for you for the new ones. Bitcoin is decentralized, governed by tens of thousands of nodes, fully distributed across the world. Bitcoin's protocol is highly tamper resistant. Bitcoin has no central authority. The network of nodes validate and this network right here validates and records all transactions, and they keep each other in check. Decentralization ensures that it has no single failure point. No entity, be it a government, bank, corporation, or individual, can control or manipulate the system. All transactions settle on a transparent, open network. That's why it's ridiculous when you hear politicians and people who are uninformed that say that it's the preferred money for illegal activity. It's not. The US dollar is. It's stupid to put transactions that are illegal on the Bitcoin network. It's there for everybody to see forever. Bitcoin is immutable forever. Secured by the most powerful computer network that spans the world, it's rapidly growing stronger. Okay, so it uses proof of work, which is a mining protocol. And so the Bitcoin network's annual energy consumption is 180 terawatt hours per year. So for those of you who aren't electricians or electrical engineers, I wasn't, that's equivalent to 21 nuclear reactors, full scale, running continuously 24/7, 365 days a year. And this prevents the network from being attacked, compromised. It's more energy than that of Ireland, Denmark, Greece, Portugal, Hungary, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Belgium, Finland, Austria, Norway, and many others. The Bitcoin network has operated continuously since 2013, processed over 1.1 billion transactions, maintaining over 11 years of uninterrupted service. Put simply, the Bitcoin network is a fortress of digital power, and it's nation state level resistant, and it's growing stronger every day. Bitcoin's also nearly infinitely divisible. Each Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million parts called Satoshis. So everyone can use it. It's able to handle hundreds of billions of microtransactions daily. But don't confuse infinite divisibility with infinite supply. Just like a dollar can be split into 100 pennies or a pizza can be cut into 8 or 12 slices, the dollar and the pizza don't get any bigger, and neither does each Bitcoin. And remember, their dollars are not limited. You can keep printing them. So that's why the dollars, the fiat melts. Bitcoin is limited to 21 million only. That's it. Bitcoin is portable. It's borderless, which means it can be sent or received anywhere in the world at any time within minutes. Unlike physical money or gold, which are cumbersome to transport, Bitcoin's digital nature makes it highly portable. You've all seen the photos and videos of gold and cash being confiscated at the border of hostile countries. You can have $1 billion or more, and all you need to do, like I can have $1 billion of Bitcoin, and all I need to do is memorize 12 words, my keys, to take Bitcoin with me anywhere in the world. But I'm not really taking it with me. It's there already. It's already wherever I go. This feature makes it an ideal global currency, especially for cross-border payments or financial inclusion in remote regions. Bitcoin is scarce. You've heard me say it a few times now. With a hard cap of 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be created, Bitcoin is truly limited in supply. So do the math. There are over 60 million millionaires in the world. Only 1/3 of them can ever own a full Bitcoin, and far, far fewer will. In short, Bitcoin is a deflationary asset that cannot be debased by like fiat currencies. This is why you often hear Bitcoin described as digital gold and a hedge against inflation. But in this way, it's even better. And Bitcoin is catching on, slowly but significantly. But it's simple. Bitcoin already trades over $50 billion a day. It settles in real time with full public ledger transparency. It has no balance sheet, no counterparty, no central bank allegiance. You can't say that about real estate. You can't say that about gold. You certainly can't say that about private credit. Bitcoin is the only uncorrelated global liquid hard capped asset that exists, let alone earn it. That alone right there earns it a spot in your portfolio. So let's peek at what happens. Let's peek at some of the drivers behind it. We talked about the introduction of ETFs, and now we have listed options on ETFs too. These are super important to the investment community, and they provide the ability for effective risk management, particularly hedge funds, family offices, and proprietary books that use it for liquidity management. So that's a tailwind for Bitcoin. And we're going to talk about some of the regulatory drivers here on top of this. First of all, you had the FASB accounting rule change, which a little over a year ago, it addresses the accounting for companies that own and hold Bitcoin. So the new guidance requires entities to measure certain Bitcoin at fair value, which changes in fair value recorded in net income with each reported period. See, the old rule was asset impairment. It meant that if you bought Bitcoin and it went down, you had to hold it at the lower of the purchase or the lowest price that it traded to. Asset impairment. And even if it traded up, you had to keep it at that low price. So if you bought it at 50,000 and went to 20,000, you had to hold it at 20,000. Even if it went to 60, 70, 80,000. If you wanted to realize that, you had to actually sell it in the market to realize that profit and make the asset unimpaired. But the new rule changes that. Now you hold it at fair market value. You market to market. So these amendments became effective last December. It's a really big deal. About a year ago, after the SEC had issued a staff accounting bulletin, the bulletin SAB 121 made it extremely onerous and possibly against accounting rules for banks to hold crypto and Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Banks then avoided having to do anything with the space, which was a key aspect of what you may have heard called choke point 2.0. But after a lot of embarrassment of the end zone run the SEC made around them, avoiding legislation, Congress repealed SAB 121 with a vote. But of course, that appeal was overturned by executive order of Biden, and so it went back into effect. Then when Trump took office and Gensler resigned from the SEC dissolved SAB 121 with SAB 122. So what does this mean for banks? This goes far beyond just buying Bitcoin in your bank investment account. It allows banks to hold Bitcoin without making them hold it as a liability, even if it's the customer's asset. So banks like JP Morgan Chase are already working on products around Bitcoin. Collateral products, lending products, borrowing products. Imagine using Bitcoin as collateral for a loan or a mortgage without ever having to sell it and having to realize that tax event. This is a huge deal. They're all working on it. It's going to go mainstream at the banks very soon. But the political landscape continues to change dramatically. Trump just created a Bitcoin strategic reserve through executive order, whereby the government can add Bitcoin to its balance sheet in a budget neutral way. On top of this, the Bitcoin Act was reintroduced to the Senate recently and spearheaded by Senator Cynthia Lummis out of Wyoming. She now has multiple co-sponsors. And the act proposes that the U.S. government buys 200,000 Bitcoin per year over 5 years for a total of 1 million Bitcoin. That's 5% of the total Bitcoin supply, and would roughly mirror the size and scope of U.S. gold reserves. Just imagine if the U.S. started buying Bitcoin and announced that they had. That sets some game theory in play for all other fiat governments that they have to start buying it too. And most recently, as Laura had led into, we have the Genius Act. The Genius Act, after passing both the House and Senate, was signed into law by Trump enacting it. Implementation still depends on final rulemaking from federal regulators and state banking authorities, but it's happening. And though not directly related to Bitcoin, it's a really big deal and will have major impact on furthering Bitcoin adoption. We'll get into the details and importance of the act in a moment, but first, an introduction into stablecoins for those new to this fast-growing space. Put simply, stable coins are digital assets, cryptocurrencies, designed to maintain a stable value over time. By pegging their price to a reference asset, such as a fiat currency or a commodity like gold or even a basket of assets, they maintain that stable value. See, the goal of the issuer of stable coins is to combine the transactional benefits of a cryptocurrency, the fast settlement, programmability, global accessibility, with the daily price stability of fiat currencies. Stablecoins like USDT and USDC are used by traders to move assets across exchanges, crypto exchanges, or park some of their assets in a cash-like instrument, much like a money market fund, during periods of uncertainty. So unlike traditional banks, which are bound by business hours, liquidity limits, and regulatory challenges, US stablecoins offer real-time settlement, global accessibility, and integration with smart contracts. You all have experience sending a wire that takes an extra day or two, or goes to the wrong hole, or that gets lost and they can't find it. That just eliminates that. And wires cost $25, $40, $50 per wire. These are immediate transactions that are nearly costless. So because of all that, the stablecoin market is it's just marched ahead, continuing to grow in both importance and size. So now the USD and USDC now are worth over a combined $200 trillion. This chart is actually a month old, so it's even larger now. And this isn't gone unnoticed. This growth, now the U.S. Treasury sees U.S. dollar stablecoins as a strategic extension of the dollar's reach. I can tell you that I was up and we were talking to congressmen and senators and their aides almost 2 years ago, and they were well aware of the importance of stablecoins. We're going to get into why right now, because they understand that the Treasury needs them. See, stablecoins, particularly those pegged to the US dollar, like USDT and USDC, function as digital versions of dollars. They're accessible globally with just a smartphone and an internet connection. And so this expands the dollar's reach into regions without robust banking system. So, and to maintain their one-to-one peg, stablecoins must be backed by high quality liquid assets. And so for most major issuers, that means primarily holding one specific type of security to follow the US dollar. You all know what that is. It's a US Treasury bond, which gets us to the Genius Act. Officially named the Guiding and Ensuring National Innovation for US Stablecoins Act, the Genius Act is a bipartisan legislative proposal backed by Senators Bill Hagerty, Republican from Tennessee, and Kirsten Gillibrand, the Democrat from New York. All right, there's some key provisions of the act. First, there's federal licensing. Issuers with more than $10 billion in circulation would require a federal license and be subject to oversight. The full reserve backing, stablecoins must be backed one by high quality liquid assets like US Treasuries or cash. Mandatory audits, issuers would be required to undergo regular independent audits and publish their reserve data. You have dual regulatory tracks. So the smaller issuers under $10 billion can also operate, but they're under state oversight. But that keeps the ecosystem open to startups, which is good. They're also the CBDC alternative. The bill expressly supports private sector US dollar stablecoins as an alternative to central bank digital currencies. If you don't know what those are, please study them. They're horrific. They're evil. We don't want them. But this brings us to the impact of the Genius Act and stablecoins on Bitcoin. So by creating a framework for payment stablecoins, it further legitimizes the entire digital asset space. It further lowers psychological and legal barriers to Bitcoin and Bitcoin allocation. Effectively, as stablecoins get the green light, Bitcoin becomes the obvious next step. Today, much of the Bitcoin demand globally is intermediated by stablecoin liquidity pairs, USDT, USDC, meaning you trade your USDT or USDC for the Bitcoin on exchange. You can't do it with US dollars. You have to buy something like this. Or you have to do it through your exchange that goes out and buys it for you. using the dollars that are in your account. So with the Genius Act compliant stablecoins, though, US banks, fintechs, and brokerages can offer them at scale, dramatically widening on-ramps. Every compliant stablecoin dollar in circulation sits one click away from Bitcoin on exchanges. Expect higher trading volumes, lower spreads, and easier access, all pushing capital flow toward Bitcoin. One of Bitcoin's core value propositions is its auditability and its transparency. We talked about that. The Genius Act requires proof of reserves for stablecoin issuers, clear attestations of dollar collateral. This standard sets the stage for investors to start comparing fiat-backed custodied assets like stablecoins versus a provably scarce bearer asset like Bitcoin. As people see stablecoin reserves are just dollars and T-bills, the contrast with Bitcoin's algorithmic scarcity will highlight Bitcoin as the superior long-term store of value. Remember, we were talking about the 10-year treasury, how problematic it is. Stablecoin issuers under the Genius Act must back coins with short-term treasuries and cash. As circulation grows into the trillions, this will just funnel demand into U.S. debt markets, but it also exposes stablecoins to the U.S. fiscal risks, deficits, downgrades, debt ceiling fights. They're just endless. Investors seeking an escape valve from government liabilities will increasingly look to Bitcoin. In other words, stablecoins pump liquidity, but Bitcoin soaks up distrust in the underlying system. The bottom line, the Genius Act doesn't name Bitcoin, but it turbocharges the Bitcoin adoption funnel. On-ramps expand, stablecoins proliferate through banks and fintech. Liquidity deepens, Bitcoin trading pairs thrive. Trust shifts, stablecoin reserve exposures highlight fiat fragility, and institutions pivot. With regulatory clarity, Bitcoin becomes portfolio eligible for them. And when they do add it, the performance of Bitcoin can change dramatically. I mean, the performance of your portfolios can change dramatically. Let's look at how. So looking at the traditional 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, over the past decade returned 127% for an annualized return of 8.5%. Not too bad. You beat the expansion of the money supply by over 1%. Replacing just 1% of the bond portfolio, though, with BTC boosts your return to 153% and 9.7% annualized. Better, adding 5% Bitcoin more than doubled your returns to 275% with a 14.1% annualized rate. For the bold, who added 10% Bitcoin, quadrupled the returns to almost 500% with a nearly 20% annualized rate, 19.5%. But if that doesn't convince you, get this, your Sharpe ratio or your risk-adjusted return goes up with each amount of Bitcoin that you add. And with 10% Bitcoin, you jump over that magical asset allocator 1.0 Sharpe ratio, hitting 1.13. Think about that. A 5% Bitcoin allocation, no leverage, no derivatives, doubles returns and significantly improves the risk-adjusted profile. And 10% kicks it up even further. For any allocator managing volatility or tracking error, that's not just compelling, that's portfolio engineering. And it's not about betting on Bitcoin. It's about using it as a convex payoff in a world where traditional assets are delivering linear risk and negative real returns. And so many of you have seen this chart before, or some of you have. This is by Jesse Myers, and he lays it out clearly. Global investable assets are now $1 quadrillion. Yes, Bitcoin is the smallest of them all, but gold has been around for thousands of years, and Bitcoin is already 1/10 its size in just 15. Some quick math here. If Bitcoin captures just 1% of global assets, that's a $10 trillion valuation, a 5x from here, without requiring retail FOMO. And the first institutions to allocate, they're not waiting for validation. They're positioning for scale. Here's a report from Gemini and Glassnode just the past month. They've found that over 30% of Bitcoin's circulating supply is now held by just 216 centralized entities. This means that it points directly to deepening custodial centralization, which means expanding institutional adoption. Since early 2015, the total Bitcoin held across major institutional and custodial entities is surged to 6.2 million BTC, or an increase of 924%. Look, most institutions manage multi-generational capital. They don't chase trends, but they all share the same pressures: duration mismatch, underperformance, and currency concentration. Here we see a survey of institutional managers who have allocated to Bitcoin. In the last 3 years, diversification has emerged as the top reason for investing, overtaking speculation. Despite the common belief that speculation is the main driver, it now ranks as the third or fourth most cited reason, often coming in below client demand and diversification. As fiduciaries, institutions are forced to ask the question, what assets survive if trust in sovereign money continues to erode? Bitcoin doesn't need 50% allocations. It needs 1% from the right players, because when they allocate, they don't sell, they rebalance, they normalize it. Bottom line, Bitcoin is the default escape valve, not a rebellion, a refuge. And it'll soon become the pillar asset that portfolios are built around. We are witnessing the quiet institutional adoption of Bitcoin, not through hype, but through structure, through process, through risk models and due diligence memos. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Bitcoin isn't being pushed, it's being pulled by the same system that once dismissed it. You've seen what's broken, you've been shown the exit, the infrastructure is built, the capital is moving, and now you have a choice. You don't need to believe in Bitcoin, you just need to believe in math. And that is it.
Well, thank you so much, James. Wasn't that amazing? I loved, there were a few comments in the chat that was so cool. I think it just kind of brings it all together that, what I really love about Bitcoin is that it's just accessible to everyone, everywhere in the world. So what else is available? Everyone, you can take it and just run away. And there were examples of a Ukraine, person or somebody in a different country. So that is so amazing. And I want to kind of bring this together because a lot of people are just learning about the Bitcoin and, what does it mean to me? Does it mean to my portfolio? Well, my financial advisor is not fully on board, or, my accountant says, don't do Bitcoin. It's not good for you. And I think you made a really, really, really nice distinction that I really want to point out, and I want people to really focus on it. Thinking about Bitcoin and all cryptocurrency that exists, there's a clear difference between a digital asset and a digital money. So, do you guys know what James said kind of midway through? What is Bitcoin? So I want to see in the chat if it's digital money or digital asset. Let's see if anybody was listening. Digital money or digital capital, okay? Asset, absolutely. And that brings, such a good point because, I think it just ties into what Tanisha was speaking in the beginning about how you diversify your portfolio. Where you're going to place your money to work for you to really have the highest ROI in time, right? What's time? It's not necessarily 3 months. It could be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years when you retire, whenever that time is for you. So I think that's really great. Thank you so much, James. And there's lots of questions for you in the end. And I want to kind of transition. James said a couple of things that will transition us to the next speaker. He mentioned the use of energy, right? And before I go into the use of energy, if you're thinking about digital things, I will make a really funny comment. If you're in the United States, the IRS just stopped accepting payments via check and making payments via check beginning with September. Okay, so if the IRS is not taking money from you in either shape, there's something happening. They're going digital some way, right? And they're the slowest to implement anything. So if the IRS took the leap forward, I really invite you to expand your mind. How can I maybe accept some digital payments in my business? Invest in something that's more digital, that's more future oriented. Just a thought for you guys. I had to throw that in. Listen, I'm not for the IRS, but I'm working with them too much. So very good. Well, James, that was an amazing presentation. I do appreciate it, and everybody absolutely enjoyed it. We're going to
you.
go and really bring it forward to the next person that we're going to talk about. And the next conversation we're going to have is going to be about the coming commodities supercycle. What does that even mean? So we're going to talk about why global energy needs. James mentioned how much energy is needed just to run Bitcoin. AI, that was mentioned by Tanisha in the beginning, mentioned energy. So energy is a big shift. I will tell you about some energy policy and laws that were just passed on July 4th at the end. But right now, I really want you to get focused on the AI-driven resource demand and really how are they setting up a powerful new commodities cycle for us. How us as investors can position for raw material, natural resources to really regain center stage. So let's bring Brien Lundin in. And Brien is a respected voice in resource investing with 30 plus years in, really being around. He's a publisher of Gold newsletter and host of New Orleans Investment Conference, guiding investors through multiple commodity cycle. Brien, I'll bring you on. Hello, hello. Welcome, Brien.
Hello,
And
how are you?
good. We have a hungry crowd today.
Good.
And this was a build up towards energy. So we'll let you take away the energy conversation for us.
Yeah, and I'm going to really cover the commodities
Yeah.
super cycle, which has a few causes behind it and factors driving it, but it also has results in a number of markets. So if I could share my screen, I'll get right to it.
You take it over.
Okay. So my title is, of course, the new commodities super cycle. So let's take a look at what that is. And my view is what we're looking at here are two secular bull markets, two mega trends at one time for two distinct reasons or two distinct driving factors. And to kind of preface this, I believe this is a unique position. We have never seen this before. We have seen bull markets in various individual commodities for very distinct reasons, but now we have two very broad-based trends that are driving bull markets in commodities across the board. Now, the markets that I will focus on today are monetary metals, really just gold and silver, and base/energy metals, and that can run the gamut from lithium to cobalt to copper in particular, and a number of other metals that are being driven by important trends today. The reasons or the factors that are driving both of these markets are monetary debasement and supply constraints, long-standing supply constraints that are running headlong into really soaring demand, some of the steepest demand curves, in fact, that we've ever seen in commodity investing. Let's look at the first one here, monetary debasement. And to start off with, I'll ask the question of our audience. What is the US dollar going to be worth, in your view, tomorrow, next year, or 5 years from now? Well, we have a pretty good idea, and that is less. It's going to be worth an awful lot less. It's going to buy an awful lot less. Its purchasing power is going to be much lower than it is today. This chart goes back to 1965. Not coincidentally, that's the year that they took silver out of US coinage. And we see that, and this chart isn't even updated, this only goes up to 2022. But we see that over that time frame, the dollar lost 90% of its purchasing power. Now, you might think that's unusual, but it really isn't in human history. It has happened over and over again. One example you see in this chart, that's the decline in the silver content, which is the decline in the value, the purchasing power of the Roman denarius. And we see a quote here from the great orator Cicero, saying things that a lot of people are saying today. The public debt should be reduced, officialdom's arrogance should be tempered and controlled. Essentially, we need to get our fiscal house in order. But again, this is something that has happened over and over in history. They didn't listen then. They're not listening now. In fact, some things never change. Throughout the history of human nature, one thing remains consistent, that leaders will overspend. And because of this overspending, they will be forced to debase the currency. We'll get into that a little bit more. And here we see the purchasing power of the US dollar against the silver content of the denarius. You can see that it mirrors what's already happened. And I think the end game is the same as well. The lesson of history is what causes declines in a currency's purchasing power. Simply put, it's spending and debt creation. Now, the lesson today is that we've entered the end game of what I believe, and I hope to show you today, is a 45-year process of ever easier money that has repercussions which are being felt right now in commodity prices and other developments. This is the chart, in my view, that tells it all. It's a little bit complicated, so let me explain it to you. The blue line is the federal funds rate. That's the interest rate that the Fed sets to set interest rates across the yield curve. Now, this chart goes back to 1980 when Paul Volcker, as Fed chairman, was trying to kill off inflation. In the process, he raised interest rates to over 20%, effectively killing off inflation as he had hoped. Now, what we see is that whenever there was an economic slowdown, in particular, a recession is marked by these gray lines, we can see that the Fed responded by lowering interest rates, initially from those ultra high rates, but then trying to get it in a normal range. Once they got it in a normal range, they continued to lower rates whenever there was a recession or even the fears of a recession. I've used red lines to mark the bottoms of these interest rate cutting cycles, and you can see it's an ever lower stair step from heights down to the basement or down to the foundation, where post the great financial crisis in 2008, we got to zero. We tried to raise rates back at that point, but then COVID came along and we lowered rates right back to zero again. We have tried to raise rates again and largely succeeded this time, getting them over 5% on a Fed funds rate, but are now lowering rates again. And we'll get into that in a bit. But again, this is a 45-year trend of ever lower interest rates, ever easier money. So what does that do? That brings us to the red line. Ever lower interest rates, ever cheaper money encourages ever greater debt accumulation. And as we see here, that red line, the federal debt has soared, just as interest rates have kept plummeting and kept going over that long-term trend line. What does that mean? What are the implications of this rising debt? This chart is a little complicated as well. The red line, again, is the federal debt, and we see it going over, in this case, over 32 trillion. The Federal Reserve actually doesn't update the federal debt numbers on a very regular basis, so this chart seems to be a little bit out of date. But if you look at the blue line, this is the interest costs, the cost of servicing that debt. And you can see after the great financial crisis, if we are in 2008 through 2010, 2015, and the like, the cost of servicing the debt, even as the debt was rising, the cost of servicing that debt wasn't rising very steeply at all. That's because we were still in a zeroed interest rate environment. Interest rates, as set by the Federal Reserve, were managed to a zero bound. And with low interest rates, the cost of servicing the debt, even though the debt kept rising, those costs were relatively low or did not rise as quickly. But look at the end of that of the chart. Look at what the blue line did as the Fed began to raise rates. The cost of servicing that debt soared. This shows the tremendous leverage that interest rates have, when debts have risen to this level, even relatively small increases in interest costs explode the cost of servicing that debt. Now, this is a chart that, or a graphic that many of us are familiar with. This is the regularly updated, constantly updated, in fact, debt clock that you can find on the internet. As of yesterday, it was a bit over $37 trillion in debt. Now, that's a lot. That's a lot per citizen. That's a lot per taxpayer, as you can see by these other numbers. But I'd like to draw your attention to those circled numbers at the bottom. You can see that in 1980, when Paul Volcker was reigning at the Federal Reserve, the federal debt to GDP ratio was a little under 35%. That meant that Volcker could raise rates. He had the freedom to raise rates. Today, Powell does not have the same toolbox that Volcker had. Now we have the debt to GDP ratio of about 124%. That means that Powell just doesn't have the same toolbox that Volcker has. He cannot raise interest rates, or he can't leave interest rates where they are today, or the federal budget collapses. Right now, again, we're paying over $1 trillion in interest costs on the federal debt each and every year. That in turn, that money is borrowed, which then adds to the debt and the deficit. So it is a vicious cycle. It is, in effect, a debt trap that the Federal Reserve is mired in. This is a representation of what that federal debt, or actually the interest payments, the cost of servicing that debt, has done over the years. As you can see, it is exploding out of sight with interest rates at the current levels. And it's not going to get any better. This year alone, the Treasury has some $10 trillion of debt to refinance. This is why things are getting critical right now. This is why, despite the fact that Powell doesn't want to look weak in light of President Trump clamoring for interest cuts, Powell doesn't want to cut rates, but he really has to. From a fiscal standpoint, we can't afford rates to be this high. Give him credit. In this case, President Trump is absolutely correct. He's mentioned this fact that we can't afford to service the federal debt with rates this high. So we've actually seen the Fed start to turn toward easier money. So the bottom line of all this, and this takes a little bit of thought, so let's go about it a little slowly. The rate of inflation, which is another word, another term for currency depreciation, that rate that your currency is depreciating has to be greater than the rate of interest on the debt, or the entire house of cards collapses. What this means is that we have to have, with this kind of a debt load, we have to have negative real rates going forward. Again, interest rates have to be below the rate of inflation. You have to depreciate your currency more quickly than you're paying interest on that debt. This is tremendously bullish for commodities and real assets of all kinds. Now, most people look at this and say, well, this is immediately obvious that this is bullish for gold and silver as monetary metals. But it is, in fact, bullish for all commodities because it eliminates the holding costs. And it makes real assets, everything from commodities to real estate, real things as opposed to financial assets. It is enormously bullish for those sectors. Now, where are we now? We've seen as of last Friday that things have changed. Despite persistent inflationary pressures, the Federal Reserve and other central banks, again, this is not just a U.S. story. It's not just a U.S. dollar story. Central banks across the world are in the same position. They will be forced to lower rates in the face of these unmanageable debt loads. Now, last Friday, in his speech at the Jackson Hole Central Bank gathering, Jerome Powell already signaled a return to easier money. And Powell's term as Federal Reserve Chairman will end at some point next year. I believe it's ending in May. Trump will have at that point most likely or possibly a majority on the Federal Reserve Board and a new Federal Reserve Chairman in place. You can bet that they are going to be lowering interest rates and taking their orders from Washington, from the White House to do so. So although we are looking at in September an initial rate cut, we are actually entering a new, easier money environment going forward for years to come. So that's the monetary debasement factor. What about the supply-demand factors that I alluded to? Simply put, what we're seeing in commodities across the board are strangled supplies, again, facing off against soaring demand. The reasons for this are decades of underinvestment. Big mining companies have been hoarding their cash. They have not been reinvesting in exploration and development of projects. Permitting and other development delays. I have a stunning chart coming up that shows how dramatic those have been. It is so much more difficult to develop a mine today, not just from capital being diverted into other sectors over the years, but permitting and environmental permitting and environmental studies, NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are trying to stymie projects across the world. The end result has been dramatic delays in developing very economic projects and delays in developing any projects across the board. There are supply deficits in these commodities, even for base case demand. If you look across and I'll have a chart on this in a moment, if you look across the spectrum of commodities, you see that if you don't factor in new sources of demand, even at base case demand scenarios, we are in supply deficits. Now we get to the dizzyingly steep demand curves for base and energy metals due to electric vehicles, artificial intelligence data centers, renewable energy, the rebuilding of the global electrical grid, and many more factors. This demand curve, simply put, is the steepest we have seen in history across the board. For gold, we're seeing soaring demand from, of all places, central banks. Now, these are the organizations that were actually selling gold in the 1990s and going into the 2000s. Now they are buying gold hand over fist for a number of reasons, one of which is what I just talked about, the debasement of currencies across the board due to the debt loads, largely and primarily with the US dollar, but also because of the dollar weaponization that we saw, most pronounced when Russia invaded Ukraine. We saw a number of very strict sanctions being placed on Russia by the US and its allies. But even those allies know that that gun is powerful and can one day be turned against them. So they have been buying gold hand over fist. In addition, we have long lead times in any market. When you have higher prices, then you see the cure for higher prices are higher prices themselves in commodities, because those higher prices stimulate further supplies. We have a lot of impediments to further supplies in commodities right now, and we'll get into some of those. Let's look at some examples of what's happening. Copper supply and demand. That gold or copper area bar at the bottom shows the annual copper supply up to 2050. Now, as you can see, it doesn't grow that much because of all these impediments to copper supplies. Yet copper demand right now, as you can see at the beginning of this chart, 2023, 2024, 2025, we are already in a supply deficit. There's already not enough copper supply to meet demand. And that supply gap is growing and growing as we see these other factors come to bear. Lithium's the same way. Now, lithium supplies can respond to the demand to some degree, but still they will remain in a structural supply deficit going forward. Now this chart shows copper mine lead times, and this gets to what I was saying about permitting delays, development delays. As you can see over the years, these delays in lead times to go from discovery to production have grown and grown until by 2030, in some cases, we will be approaching, for some projects, as much as 35 to 40 years between discovery of deposit to its actual development into a mine. This is due to permitting issues, as I mentioned, other delays, but also most copper projects are enormous. They take a lot of development time, a lot of build time, and because of that, and because of the impact they have on the environment, permitting sometimes is virtually impossible, or has been. This is an interesting chart showing the growth projections for critical minerals demand in 2040 relative to today. So that's only 15 years from now. We see that there's a tremendous increase in demand for lithium. This again is for, or obviously is for, lithium batteries and the like. Now, the green bar shows the current status quo. If nothing changes, stated current policies, this is a growth in demand that we'll see. If we see additional demand from the net zero emissions goals by 2050, the yellow bar represents that added demand. Now, I think we're only going to see a fraction of that added demand. I don't think we're going to see a real global move toward net zero emissions as many as envisioned a couple of years ago. Still, we're looking at tremendous increases in demand across lithium, graphite, nickel, rare earths, cobalt, and copper. Now, if you look at the copper bar, I think, in my opinion, that's understated. I think we're going to see much greater demand from copper. And frankly, I think copper is one of the safest and surest ways to play this new commodities supercycle. I think that's one of those investments you can set it and forget it and come back in a few years and you'll be very happy with what your investments have done. Now let's look at gold. Again, I mentioned that central banks have been buying gold hand over fist. This chart is only updated through 2023, but 2024 actually increased over 2023. This year, in 2025, we're actually falling back a bit from those record levels. We are not quite over, probably won't get quite over 1,000 tons of central bank demand this year. I think partly that fallback in demand is due to simply dollar cost averaging. I think central banks are buying on a programmatic basis. They are devoting a certain amount of funds every month, every quarter toward gold to build up their gold reserves vis-a-vis the dollar. And as the gold price rises, they are simply buying less tonnage with that amount. So looking forward, I think that central bank demand will remain pivotal to the market. But I think rather than driving the price higher, it's going to support the price. Now, this is the end result of, or the trend that's resulting from this, this tremendous demand from central banks for gold. These are international reserves. These are central bank reserve mixes, and the dollar share, which is the red line, versus gold share. Now you can see back in the 1800s and early 1900s, gold was the primary component of central bank reserves. Makes sense. We were on a gold standard. But then after 1930, when gold was removed from the gold standard in the US, essentially was abolished, we see that gold share dropped and the dollar share rose. Look at the end of that trend line, particularly since 2015 or 2013, when central banks really started buying gold at a much more voracious rate. You can see that the share of international reserves is rising for gold. And what are they exchanging that for? What are they exchanging for that gold? They're exchanging dollars. You can see that the dollar share of international reserves is falling. Now, it'll be a while, I think. I don't think those lines are going to cross anytime soon, but the trend here is important. Gold's importance as international, as a global reserve is growing, and the dollar's importance is falling. I don't believe that we're going to see the dollar lose its international reserve currency status anytime soon. I don't think that's something we should really bet on right now, but the trend is clear. Gold is rising, the dollar is falling, and you want to be on the side of the rising trend. One of the things that's happening right now is that, or to put this gold bull market that's about 18 months old in a nutshell, is that central banks have driven the market much higher. Now, the Western investors / speculators have been largely uninvolved in this market for much of that time. What we're seeing now is that they are starting to come into the market, and that's evident here with the GLD gold ETF. This is a paper representation of gold, and it's very liquid, and we can see that, and it's also a good proxy for Western investor buying in gold. We can see that that has been rising so far this year. So Western investors are coming into the market. But also interestingly, they're coming in via two sectors that have been lagging. One of these is mining stocks. Mining stocks, this is a chart, shows the GDX mining stock index divided by gold itself. When this line is rising, the gold stocks are actually outperforming, rising more quickly than gold itself. Now, since August 1st, that's really taken off. Central banks don't buy mining stocks, but Western investors and speculators do. This shows that they are coming into the market right now, and seeing the gold price having advanced so far, are trying to leverage that and get exposure to gold through sectors that typically outperform gold and have lagged gold to this point. And here again, we see the mining stocks rising as a result of that. Interestingly, even though many of the major miners have doubled in price over the last year, they remain on a price to book value, price to net asset value, price to earnings ratio. They remain at near all-time lows, so they are dramatically undervalued, even though they have advanced considerably. So prices are beginning to rise across the board in all of these sectors, and I think these are creating what I call generational opportunities, opportunities we haven't seen the likes of which since the early 2000s. Critical metals are having a significant breakout from a sideways trend. Copper has been rising. Now look at the end of that line and you see a dramatic drop. We'll zoom in on that and see what in the world happened there. Well, that was President Trump's imposition of tariffs on finished copper goods. Caught the market by surprise, and we had a very dramatic drop in the spot price or global price of copper. Interestingly, we did not see quite the reaction in COMEX or futures copper, because that copper represents supplies in the US that would not be subject to a tariff. But my view on this is that this is a tremendous opportunity because, again, we had that very steep demand curve for copper. That curve is not going to go away because you can't substitute for copper. In virtually all of its applications, there are no substitutions. You cannot innovate around it. So the demand is still there, and if the supplies are constrained, that only adds up to higher prices in the end. So this is, in particular, is what I believe is a dramatic opportunity in copper. Silver has broken out for a very long time, about 11 years. Silver was stymied at the $35 level. It has recently broken out in recent months above that $35 ceiling through that resistance, and now is breaking out to what I believe will be $40 in the short term, and then it will make an assault on the $50 level. Silver offers natural leverage to gold. and it is starting to finally outperform gold. But gold itself has had a hell of a run. If we go back to when this began, March of 2024, the price is up tremendously. But as you can see, have been trading sideways really since May. We are seeing signs right now that we're about to break out of that trading range. Typically, we have a trading range in the summer, and typically, from a seasonality standpoint, the fall is a very positive period for gold. We are about to, I believe, break out for a number of those reasons. And again, I think the Fed's shift toward an easier money policy will be one of the big catalysts for that. So bottom line, this is another long-term monetarily based gold bull market in gold, like we saw in the 1970s and 2000s. And I'm focusing on gold here to show you what kind of potential we're looking at. Here is a long-term chart going back to 1970 of gold, and the way I count it, 3 previous bull markets, and then now the 4th bull market. If you look at the early 70s, you'll see that gold went up 5.6 times from the bottom to the peak. Then we had a short bear market in mid 1970s, then another run to $850, which took gold from 8.2 times from its bottom to its peak. If you go to the 2000s, you see that gold embarked on an 11-year bull market that went up, in which it went up 7.5 times. Now the bottom that I mark for this bull market is around $1,050 in 2015. If we go up 5.6, 8.2, 7.5 times from that level, we're really talking about a $7,000 or $8,000 gold price at the end of this secular bull market, whenever it may occur. There's an alternative interpretation, though. If you look at the red number there, a lot of people lump the 1970s into one long bull market. If that's the case, then we have about 24 times from the low to the high in the 1970s, which gives you even more explosive potential for this bull market. Now, how could we get to that level? If the U.S. gets to some point where we need to establish or reestablish some credibility in the U.S. dollar, at some point in this cycle of ever easier money and repeated blow-ups, repeated bubbles bursting, and repeated rescue efforts by the Federal Reserve, if we get to a situation like that, where to restore credibility in the U.S. dollar, we have to reattach it to gold, some backing by gold at some level. Then you see just backing M2 at 20%, 40%, not even 100%, we get to levels, gold price levels of over $20,000 to do so, to reestablish that credibility in the dollar. That's the possibility. I'm not here to predict that, but again, we have to recognize the important trends, the growing importance of gold, the trend of the federal debt, which is proven unsolvable. It's always growing, continues to grow, and the necessity for ever easier money in light of those debts that have been accumulated. At some point, we are going to need, in my view, to reestablish credibility in the dollar through some attachment to gold in some way. And again, that's where we get to these seemingly fantastic gold price levels. One way to play it that we focus on that I focus on in Gold Newsletter is through mining equities. And in fact, I focus in the much more speculative end of the spectrum in the junior mining stocks, which I would not recommend for widows and orphans. Very risky, high potential, but much higher risk. But the results in that area, when you have a rising bull market behind you, can be spectacular. One example, and obviously this is not every stock that we recommend, but one of our bigger winners in recent years was Great Bear Resources, which rose 87 times from the entry price in a gold newsletter alert to when it was finally taken out by a major mining company. So that's the kind of potential that is out there, but I would recommend, if you want to get into this sector, again, it's higher risk, higher potential return, but much higher risk. You need to educate yourself. You need to educate yourself by subscribing to newsletters in the sector, like Gold Newsletter, going to conferences like my New Orleans Investment Conference. And I do urge you that if you want to learn more about the sector, go to goldnewsletter.com. Download our free Investor's Guide to Gold and Silver. I outline all the best newsletters, all the best conferences, and every way you can invest in the sector across the board. And you can follow me on X, and where I have running commentary. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Guys, wasn't this amazing? I love to see a completely different perspective. And it's so interesting. I really like that you mentioned copper as well. I was listening to a podcast, I think it was just about a week or so ago, and this gentleman named Rich Galgano sold his company, and he was in the cable. He's like, it's just a commodity. What kind of value, how much money can you get for a business that's so boring? It's just a commodity. It was just copper wire. That's all he had. And he was just serving the low voltage community. It was a small company. He sold it for nearly $500 million, right? And it was a commodity. He wasn't even the mining industry. He was just using it. And the value of these commodities are just booming, hence the price that he got for his company. He actually wrote a book, Down to the Wire, which was very, very amazing. I know there was a book trend in the chat that people were talking. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think a lot of the people are also very much interested in the easy money and lowering the interest rates. Everybody looks at, kind of what's closest to us. And I know we get these questions a lot from our, business owners and investors, like, what do we think? What's the interest rate? So I know people have lots of questions for you. So I really encourage you to subscribe, to follow Brien. Also, if you're going to be here for the Q&A, just put your questions in the chat here, or you can use the Q&A box as well. And in the Q&A session, we will go over these questions. Again, thank you so much. That was so amazing to look at how there's still hope. And the gold is not going to die. It's still coming back. So we'll see you again in the Q&A. Thank you so much, Brien. That was fantastic.
Welcome.
Yep. So really, we're moving forward, guys. And isn't this amazing that we have so much possibility? We have the AI that we talked about with Tanisha, which all relies on power and on all the energy. Then we talked really, with James, we really talked about the cryptocurrency, the Bitcoin, the stable coins, all of that. Like, it really tackles into really diversifying in what you're investing in, really looking at your business and how can you really strategize to really make sure that you have all the pieces of the puzzle so you can actually invest. And really, the next conversation that we want to have is going to be around the investments. A lot of the people that we see, and we deal a lot with business owners, so a lot of the business owners are short on cash. If you're a high wage earner, you might have excess cash, but all of this comes to how can I invest, right? Because all of these are opportunities of investment, opportunities of, really diversifying your asset base. And the next conversation, we really want to look at how self-directed IRAs really let business owners and investors diversify beyond the Wall Street and the real assets that you can hold. And you can look into gold, we just talked about, private credit, we can look at Bitcoin, right? And really tax advantage strategies that really make SDIRAs really so powerful. So today we're going to have John Bowens joining us. He's a national educator who has trained 20,000 plus investors and professionals on really tax advantaged retirement accounts and alternative asset investment. So I see John is already up and running. Let me bring you on. How are you? Meet John Bowens. You're muted.
Hi,
Yep.
Laura. Good to see you again. Great to
Yeah.
hear from you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Very good. So again, bringing this home, we've seen all these types of assets that we can use and we can invest in. Now, this is giving you an opportunity. How can I find the cash? You might be having the cash and not know it. You might be able to get this up and running just using some of the qualified, retirement accounts that you have. And John is going to take you all over with that. So John, take it away.
Excellent. Laura, thank you so much. Big thank you to you in hosting this event and getting us all in and shepherded through the process. Really excited to be here, as always, to educate and hopefully inspire some folks to look at investing and saving using retirement accounts through a little bit different lens. And of course, I'd be remiss to not say a big thank you to Cynthia Dalton, who has organized this entire event, has done an amazing job marketing the event and getting everybody here. So big thank you to both of you. I'm going to go ahead and dive right in here, folks, and take us into the Q&A. So my topic today is specifically with respect to self-directed IRAs, solo 401k plans, HSAs. We'll spend a heavy part of the presentation specifically on Roth tax-free investing, solo 401k Roth tax-free investing, and HSA tax-free investing. Now, I will, throughout the presentation, also make sure that I add in how individuals are investing in alternative assets. And I'll show some case studies of clients investing in AI software companies, clients investing in cryptocurrency. So certainly still topical to the overall program today, but more specifically on how you can take control of your retirement savings accounts and invest in alternative asset classes. I enjoyed the last presentation specifically on gold and silver. Interestingly, we do permit individuals to utilize their IRAs, their solo 401k plans, their HSAs to invest in physical gold, silver, and other precious metals. So some folks, they prefer to invest in the actual physical assets instead of maybe like a gold or silver ETF. And certainly that's not investment advice, but I can just tell you from my experience that some investors prefer to hold the physical assets. And we do have clients that utilize their self-directed accounts to do so. So ultimately, the bottom line of this presentation is we show you how to take control of your retirement savings accounts. Your IRAs, your 401ks, we'll even add in there your HSAs. If you're a self-employed individual, you can take control of, instead of paying taxes over and over again, you can contribute to what we call a solo 401k plan. You could potentially get some favorable tax deductions or put money in after tax, tax-free Roth, and be able to compound that year over year in a tax-free environment. The reality is most Americans, 99.5% of America, is on the left-hand side of the screen here, which is they control. Now, who is they? They would be most traditional financial institutions, most financial advisors, financial planners, wealth management consultants. They can only permit you or only advise you on investing in what? Investing in traditional stocks, mutual funds, publicly traded assets, mutual fund portfolios, ETF-based portfolios. Those are the types of investment products that they can offer. And that's not me disparaging financial advisors or financial planners, because I work with thousands of financial planners and financial advisors. Some of my best friends are financial advisors and financial planners. And they call me and say, John, I have a client that wants to invest in real estate with their retirement account, but I can't do that within my shop, but I know that your shop can handle this. And so it's about the ability to take control. Most financial institutions are going to limit you on the types of investments that you can select and place in your IRA, 401k, solo 401k, HSA. So the reality is they really control the destiny of your retirement portfolio based on the recommendations and advice that they provide. Our clients, the less than 0.5% of America, they're looking to do what? They're looking to take control through what we call a self-directed IRA or self-directed 401k or self-directed HSA. Now, don't allow self-directed to confuse you. Self-directed is just an industry term. It just indicates to you that you can invest in real estate, private equity, hedge funds, cryptocurrency, or you can also self-direct, of course, into publicly traded stocks, mutual funds, and other traditional assets. In other words, you can diversify into public market investments and then also private market investments, also known as alternative investments. Now, why is this all possible? Well, the law says that it's possible. So if we go back to 1974, the Employee Retirement Income Securities Act was passed. And out of the ERISA Act of 1974, that really paved the path for IRAs and eventually the 401k. And fast forward to 1998, the Roth IRA, the early 2000s, the Roth 401k. And then even along the course of time, we had the HSA, Health Savings Account. And so when the law was written originally back in 1974, it was written in such a way that was exclusive from an investment perspective rather than being inclusive. So in other words, the law tells us what we can't invest in, not what we can invest in. And there's a very short list of investments that we cannot make with our IRA, 401k, or other tax advantage retirement account. And there are a very short list of individuals that we cannot transact with. This is all found under 4975 of the Internal Revenue Code. So again, the law tells us that we can do this. We can invest in real estate with our IRAs and 401ks. We can invest in private equity and hedge funds and cryptocurrency and physical gold and silver and all of these alternative investments. But why is it that most financial institutions don't allow you to do this? Well, because they don't necessarily have the pipes, the plumbing, they don't have the personnel, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the platforms, they don't have the systems. And in some cases, they have no way to monetize it. And so they can't make money when you invest on your own into real estate. And so for that reason, they just don't permit you to invest in those types of investment opportunities. That's where you have to look for the right type of financial institution. We call these institutions financial custodians. Financial custodians. So there's specialized custodians that can permit you to hold alternative investments so that you can be in control of your retirement savings accounts and invest in what you're most knowledgeable with. For example, I have a client that is a retired surgeon, and so he wants to invest his retirement money into medical device companies that he understands because of his background as a surgeon. So he seeks out those types of opportunities, and he builds a portfolio of medical device companies in the startup space within his Roth IRA. And of course, being in control, there's some really interesting tax strategies or tax efficiencies associated with using these accounts. And that's why I talk about what I call the 4 tax favored accounts. And I know, Laura, you and I have spoken about this on many, many occasions, and you have clients that do this, and you yourself help people understand how to create more tax efficient structures as a tax planner yourself. And some of the tools that we use as tax planners in the industry are what we call the 4 tax favored accounts. And so the first is what we call a tax deferred account, a traditional IRA, also known sometimes as a rollover IRA. So if you had a 401k with an old employer, you roll it over into what we call a traditional IRA. So this is tax deferred, meaning when you were putting money in, you were generally speaking getting a tax deduction. Your growth is tax deferred. And then when you take money out in your retirement years, that's when you pay taxes. Going back to 1974, when the law was written, the thinking behind the federal government was allow Americans to get a deduction during their higher income years and offset that and defer it to their lower income years, which at that point, when they take money out, they're paying less in taxes. The challenge is that doesn't work for everybody. Some people end up being in a higher tax rate environment in their retirement years, or because of investing in growth potential within their accounts through their investment strategies, they find it makes more sense to pay the taxes now rather than paying them later. And that's why we talk about this next tax favored account number 2, which is the Roth IRA. So the Roth IRA is the opposite of a traditional IRA. We always use the analogy of you either pay taxes on the seed or you pay taxes on the crop. So with a traditional IRA, you didn't pay taxes on the seed, so you have to pay it on the crop. With a Roth IRA, you get the taxes out of the way now. You don't get a deduction for that money going in. But now you have tax-free compounding growth. And when you distribute money from the Roth IRA, you pay 0% tax. And interestingly, because of what I call the Roth IRA layered cake, the Roth ordering rules embedded in the tax code, embedded within the IRS guidelines, in some cases, you can even take money out of a Roth IRA prior to 59.5 and pay 0% tax. There's no 10% premature withdrawal penalty. There's no taxes on the distribution. That would be providing that you're only distributing money that you contributed or money that's converted from traditional to Roth that's seasoned for 5 years. So there's some really interesting nuances that you'll learn about when you go into the greater depths of what I'm talking about here. Now, I don't have time to go through all of those depths, but I can certainly at the end of the program share with you some free educational material that you can take advantage of so that you can go into some of those more hyper depths and learn about how you can take advantage of all these tax efficiencies. So stay tuned for that. I want to mention Roth conversion. So I like to call this the Roth equation. I'll pull this up in just a few moments on a slide for you. But you have the ability as a taxpayer, as an individual, to convert money from your pre-tax account to your Roth. We call it a Roth conversion. And I'll show you a couple examples of that in just a moment of where clients actually did this. They said, hey, I'm going to pay a lot of taxes this year or over the next few years. But guess what? All of my growth is going to be tax-free and all of my distributions are going to be tax-free as well. Now, to numerically represent this for you on a slide, this helps you understand the difference between taxable savings, tax-deferred traditional savings, and Roth savings. So just using a very basic compounding interest example, I put $6,000 in a year for the next 25 years. I save away $6,000 a year for the next 25 years every year, putting another $6,000 in. And I make a, let's say, 12% compounding return. I'm going to plug that into my financial calculator, and I'm going to apply a tax rate of 30% while I am growing the $6,000 that I'm putting in every year, and then a tax rate of 20% when I distribute. In a taxable environment, I, of course, have to pay taxes every year. Now, yes, there's different strategies around how to have additional tax efficiency aside from a retirement account, like 1031 exchanges in real estate, like step up in basis. You pass away and leave assets to your heirs. 1202, all different sorts of things that you're going to hear people throw out there that can be tax efficient instruments. And those are all great. And I would encourage you to explore those types of things. But what if you could use a self-directed IRA or Roth IRA and not have to worry about all of the different parameters and requirements and restrictions? What if you had more freedom to be able to invest in private equity and crypto and real estate and not have to worry about the burden of taxation? That's exactly what these self-directed tax-favored accounts do for us. So then we look at the traditional IRA, which again is a tax-deferred account. So as money goes in, we get a deduction for it, and eventually we got to pay taxes. So if we're in a tax-deferred traditional environment, you'll see there nearly $900,000 saved. If we move over to the Roth IRA environment, this would be we put money in after tax. It grows tax-free. We take the money out. We pay 0% tax. And so in a Roth IRA, you'll see 1.117 million saved. So if we compare the Roth IRA to the taxable environment, we have over $500,000 in tax savings. Roth IRA compared to traditional IRA, we got over $200,000 in tax savings. So Roth can be really, really powerful because of compounding interest in the absence of taxation. This is a basic numerical representation of that. Now, I have clients that have both traditional and Roth. I have clients that are slowly transitioning their traditional money over to their Roth. I have some clients that want to just stick with their traditional IRA, and that's okay. Some people have a lot of 401k money from an old job, and the natural progression is to just at least get it out of the only Wall Street designed products and start investing in real estate or private equity or the other investments that they have a particular knowledge base of or expertise on, and they want to be able to allocate into those types of assets instead of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Whatever your situation is, there's some interesting tax efficiencies here that you're starting to see. And of course, couple that with the ability to invest in non-standard investment opportunities, AKA investments outside of the traditional stock market. Okay, then we have tax favorite account number 3, which is the health savings account, HSA. And I'll even share with you an example of a self-directed investor that makes private money loans secured by real estate. So he loans money to house flippers, and he partners his HSA with his other accounts for these private money loans. And then the interest income flows back into his HSA, and he pays no tax. Now, a lot of people think about health savings accounts, HSAs, as what? Just a vehicle for paying for healthcare. All they think about is put money in, get a deduction, and then take it out the same year or the next year and pay for healthcare. What a lot of people aren't thinking about is what I call medical bill stacking. Write it down, medical bill stacking. So let me explain to you the way I approach this for myself and my wife. I have my HSA. Every year I contribute and I get a tax deduction for that. The growth within the HSA is tax-free. And then when I take the money out, I can pay for healthcare, or I can go back in time to healthcare expenses that I incurred in the past, and I can reimburse myself for those healthcare expenses. Now, you got to follow the rules. So I have to have had an HSA at the time of incurring the expense to reimburse myself. But if you follow the rules, this can be really, really powerful. So with the HSA, I get triple the tax benefits. I get deductions going in, I get tax-free growth, and then I get tax-free withdrawals, and I can use that to pay for my medical in the future or reimburse myself for previous year's healthcare-related expenses. So in other words, folks, what I'm saying is my HSA debit card doesn't exist. I cut it up at a seminar weeks ago because I don't want to be tempted to use my HSA debit card. What do I want to do? I want to keep my healthcare expenses, my receipts, store those away in my electronic archive, grow my HSA tax-free to eliminate the variable of taxation, and then eventually reimburse myself for those medical-related expenses. Again, I call this medical bill stacking. Super powerful. If you have an HSA now with another financial institution, you don't have to keep it there. You don't have to change healthcare policies. You don't have to change companies. It's not like a 401k. You can just transfer it dollar per dollar into a self-directed HSA and start doing these types of things. Most people with their HSA from an investment perspective, what are they doing? Cash. I see a lot of people, their HSA sits in cash. It does nothing. You know what it does? It's completely in the control of someone else that gets to make a ton of interest off your money, and you're getting nothing for it. That's the reality of how it works in financial services. I hate to be so blunt about it, but it's the truth. Instead, you can move over to the self-directed world where you control. And for example, what I do with my HSA is I make loans secured by real estate to investors. I charge interest. That interest goes back into my HSA. So instead of making 0% interest in my HSA this year, I'm about to make 14.77% interest on a private money loan I did. Now, when I talk about my investing, I'm not telling you that you should do that. That's not advice. I'm not telling you should go out and do exactly what I'm doing. I'm just giving you examples of how I use my HSA and how some of our other clients here at Equity Trust do that. All right, last but not least, the fourth tax favored account is the solo 401k plan. And this is really a highlight of the program because as a self-employed person, if you're self-employed, if you're a W-2, but you also have a side business as a self-employed person, maybe you have an S-Corp, maybe you have an LLC tax as an S-Corp, maybe you have a C-Corp, maybe you're just a sole proprietorship, and you don't have any W-2 employees. In most cases, you're going to qualify for a solo 401k plan. And you're going to learn with the solo 401k plan, you could potentially contribute up to $70,000 when you're under the age of 50. When you're 50 and over, you could potentially contribute up to $77,500. And if you're 50 and over, up to $81,250. And I'll show an example of how that works in just a few moments. Okay, just a quick pit stop, if you will, from the case studies that I'm about to share with you. For those of you that aren't familiar with Equity Trust Company, I don't like to talk about this at the very beginning. I like to give you a little bit of learnings before I actually say, okay, hey, I'm Equity Trust and John Bowens, this is what I do. And this doesn't need to be a lengthy introduction to me. Equity Trust, we're a directed IRA custodian. We have over 50 years of financial services experience. Our company founder, Dick Desich, he was my mentor starting back nearly 20 years ago. He started the predecessor to Equity Trust back in 1974, coincidentally, when the law was passed, like I talked about. We now have over $71 billion in assets under custody and administration. Our offices are located in Cleveland, Ohio, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Fort Myers, Florida, and Chicago, Illinois. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, over 400 workshops, over 100,000 investors. I'm a certified IRA services professional through the American Bankers Association. I'm very, very quick. I'm talking fast just because you didn't come here to learn about me and the company that I represent. You came here to learn. But I did want to make sure you understand who we are, our brick and mortar, because a lot of people don't know about this. That's the reality of it. You're not going to find billboards, television advertisements, or billions of dollars in advertising being spent on this type of stuff. It's not the way it works. This, of course, is education, not financial advice. All right, how do you transition? So how do you go from you control to self-directed? Well, You don't have to move all of your money to a new financial custodian like Equity Trust. You could just move a portion over. That's entirely up to you. No one is here forcing your hand on deciding to do one thing or the other. You're in full control. But if you have these different types of accounts already, like a Roth IRA, a simple IRA, a SEP IRA, a 401k, an old 457 from a previous governmental job, a traditional IRA, a TSP, 403b. So there's these different types of retirement accounts out there. And you'll find, for the most part, you can simply roll over or transfer into the appropriate self-directed account. Now, that might be a traditional IRA. It might be a Roth IRA. For some of you, it might be a solo 401k plan. And then, of course, if you have an HSA, you would transfer over into a self-directed HSA. Now, you'll notice here, non-taxable rollover or transfer. So when you're rolling funds over or transferring funds, that's why you're going to work with the appropriate financial custodian so that we can help you initiate a rollover or transfer and you don't create a taxable event. So as long as you follow the rules, you're just moving from essentially one bank account to another. You're moving from one financial institution to another financial institution. And if you're someone that maybe is starting a little bit late in the game, or you're saying, hey, how do I maximize contributions to these accounts? Well, you have the opportunity to do that. As long as you have earned income, you meet the eligibility requirements, there's the ability to contribute money into these accounts on an annual basis. So for example, a traditional and or Roth IRA, you can contribute combined up to $7,000 in tax year 2025 when you're under the age of 50. When you're of the age of 50 or over, you can contribute up to $8,000 combined between these two accounts. Some people just contribute to the traditional IRA, some people just to the Roth IRA. And some people contribute to the traditional IRA and then convert to a Roth IRA. That's known as a backdoor contribution because their income is too high to support a traditional IRA contribution. Unfortunately, a lot of higher net worth individuals, people that have higher income, were told that they're not allowed to have a Roth IRA. It's absolutely not the case. You can have a Roth IRA. You just have to do what we call a backdoor contribution, which is contribute to a traditional IRA and convert to a Roth IRA. And then you have the solo 401k plan. You can contribute up to $70,000 in 2025 when you're under the age of 50, $77,500 when you're 50 and over. And then the HSA contribution is going to be dependent on whether you're under or over 55 years of age and whether it's a single policy, just you, or a family policy where maybe you have a spouse and children on that policy. Okay, moving on to some investment examples, case studies. This is really where I want to spend some time here with you guys so you can understand how individuals are actually investing with their self-directed IRAs or solo 401k plans. So this is Randall, and Randall had the opportunity to invest in a coffee company. Now, this is a coffee company that has brick and mortar actual stores that you can go to and buy coffee and sit down and hang out, and then you can actually buy their roasted beans online. And it's interesting because this company also has an impact component of it, where a certain percentage of their sales actually goes to things like drilling wells in areas where people don't have clean drinking water. That's something that I know we're not all that familiar with here in America, but that goes on all over the world, of course. And so it's interesting how there's kind of that impact component of it. And Randall, because he visits this coffee shop and he knows it and he knows the owner, he decided, hey, it makes sense for me to make an investment in this particular company. And he had an opportunity to invest in the private stock of this company. So this is not a publicly traded company. They're not on the stock exchange. He can't go to his investment advisor or broker and just buy this stock. He has to use a self-directed custodian. So he opens up a Roth IRA. He transfers money from his existing Roth IRA. He's got $51,000 in his Roth IRA to invest. So he invests $51,000 into the privately held company. And for that $51,000 investment, his Roth IRA now holds private stock in that company. So as dividends are paid, those dividends go where? His Roth IRA. Does he pay any tax? No. If he sells that stock eventually, he doesn't pay any tax on the capital gains. It goes back into his Roth. Now, it is an illiquid holding, meaning he can't just go to the company and sell his shares tomorrow. There's no market for that. So the idea is his returns should be significantly greater because of the risk that he's taking on. And he feels strongly that that's the case. You need to make that assessment on your own as you're evaluating investment opportunities. And so eventually, if that company did go public, then the shares would likely convert to common stock. And then he would be able to eventually sell that stock on the open market, and his Roth IRA would then benefit tax-free from all of the gains. So that's Randall. Another example of investing in a privately held company, this is Ben. So Ben is very focused on investing in medical device companies. He has a deep background of investing in medical device companies and working for private equity firms that are in the medical device arena. And so he's leveraging his knowledge and expertise as a former investment banker and private equity manager to go out and actually invest in medical device companies. And so he opened up a traditional IRA. He rolled over money from an old 401k. That's what we call a 401k rollover into the self-directed traditional IRA. He invested $50,000 into this medical device company that is developing a real-time vitals monitoring device. And so it's a piece of technology in the medical arena. His $50,000 convertible note is held in his self-directed traditional IRA. And that convertible note can be converted to common stock at 90% of the current share price at that time. So he basically can convert his convertible note and get shares at a discount at current market value at that particular time in the future. In the interim, the convertible note is paying a 5% coupon, 5% interest. So that 5% interest goes back into his traditional IRA, tax deferred, and then eventually the goal is that that convertible note is going to convert to common stock. Last one, a startup company. I wanted to add one in here specific for this group because I know that this program was all about AI and some alternative investment strategies. And this is a client of mine, Debbie. She's a real estate agent, and she opened up a traditional IRA. She rolled money over from her existing retirement account, and she is in the real estate sales business. And so she understands the different drivers and the different mechanics of generating leads in that business. And she found a company that's an AI-based software company that helps realtors drive more leads. And they have more than just a proof of concept. They're actually in production, the product's being used, they're beyond beta testing. And so Debbie had an opportunity as a, call it early stage investor, to be able to invest in this company. Now, it's a much higher risk investment opportunity, right, than maybe just putting your money in the S&P 500, but she understands it and she's willing to do that because of the potential multiple when this company eventually sells to a much larger company. And that's ultimately the goal, is that there'll be a big exit, and then her traditional IRA, or if she converts it to a Roth IRA, which she's considering doing, all of her gains will then go tax-free into her Roth IRA. So she invested $45,000. And for that $45,000 investment, she now has a membership interest in the company. It's an LLC structure. So her $45,000 investment got her a membership interest, an equity partner. She's now an equity partner, if you will, in that LLC. And that asset is held directly in her traditional IRA. Crypto investing. So equity trust. We don't endorse or recommend specific cryptocurrency investments. We don't give advice on crypto investing, but we do have a crypto platform. We developed and we launched this product or this platform to the public in 2018, 2019. So we've been at it for about 5 or 6 years. It's one of the leading crypto platforms in the industry for self-directed IRAs. And ultimately, crypto investing with an IRA versus outside of an IRA, of course, is that crypto is treated as personal property. So if you sell it, buy and sell within 12 months, it's short-term gains. If you buy and sell beyond 12 months, it's long-term gains. In a self-directed Roth IRA, it's all tax-free, it's tax-free going forward, and it's tax-free withdrawals during your retirement years. So this is an example of client John. He didn't put a whole lot of money in. He put $10,000 in. This was over the last about a year and a half. He put $10,000 in. He invested in Solana and Bitcoin. He made $4,000 in gains. He saved $600 in taxes because he did that in his self-directed Roth IRA. I wanted to show you an example of a smaller amount of money, not, the transaction like some of you see where someone put 50,000 into Bitcoin and now it's worth $1 million and they didn't pay any taxes. Have those types of things happen in self-directed IRAs? Yes, they have. But I just wanted to show you an example that's a little bit more recent with a little bit smaller amount. The idea is I'm not going to say anybody can do this, but the idea is there's lower barriers to entry. You don't have to be an accredited investor, for example, to invest in and with your IRA into cryptocurrency. Now you have to make the decision on investing in crypto and doing some research and due diligence on your own, because yes, it's a highly speculative, highly volatile asset class, and you have to understand that. But if you're interested in investing in cryptocurrency, you have the platform within your equity trust account to do that. Okay, speeding up here on just a few other case studies or examples. For those of you that are interested in real estate investing, I know there's a lot of people on the call that have an interest in real estate investing, whether that's single family properties, lending money, maybe investing in apartment building projects, for example. This is Kevin and Cynthia. And in 2011 and 2012, they began converting their traditional IRAs to Roth IRAs. So in 2011, Kevin converted his traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. Him and his wife, Cynthia, had 401ks with their old employers. They rolled those funds over to traditional IRAs, and then they converted to Roth IRAs. And so in 2011, Kevin converted his $50,000 and some change, paid the taxes on it, and now the Roth is growing tax-free. Cynthia converted $66,000 and some change in 2012. So the total was $117,000. We like to call this converting in stages. So they converted in 2011 and then 2012 to spread out their tax burden over 2 years. Because of course, when you convert from traditional to Roth, at that point, you have to add that amount to your ordinary income and you have to pay taxes accordingly. Now, as Kevin and Cynthia say, always better to pay taxes on the seed of $117,000 than the much larger crop of over $2 million. So they've grown their Roth IRAs through their real estate transactions that they've done. And still to this day, their real estate that they hold in their self-directed Roth IRAs, they've grown their Roth IRAs to over $2 million with their market value of their properties, plus the cash flow that's coming in from those properties. They've done, it's actually now over 40 real estate transactions. They've done over 40 real estate transactions. These are just two pictures of properties that they bought and sold in their self-directed Roth IRAs. In the beginning days, they were just trying to get the proverbial flywheel going, right? They didn't have a lot of money to start with, so they had to get the proverbial flywheel going. And they have what they call their Path to Home Ownership program. So they buy properties from off-market sellers. So they identify properties from off-market sellers. They acquire those assets, those properties. They pay contractors to do the renovations and repairs and improvements. That adds significant value to the properties, of course. They then sell the properties to qualified tenant buyers on terms, owner financing, or lease option to purchase. They also do rent to own and still hold some rental properties in their Roth IRAs. And so with the strategy of buying, forcing a lot of appreciation through renovations, and then selling an owner financing, those tenant buyers will then qualify for financing anywhere between 18 to 24 months. And then they refinance and pay off Kevin and Cynthia's Roth IRAs, which at that point, they recognize some significant appreciation in their Roth, recognize cash return, profit in their Roth. They pay no taxes on that because it's their Roth IRA. There's no recapture depreciation. There's no long-term capital gains tax. There's no depreciation schedules. There's no need for a cost segregation study. There's no 1031 exchange. It's all tax-free in their Roth IRA. That's super important. And so on these two properties, they made between 20% cash on cash return. And then eventually when the tenant buyer refinanced, they recognized about $70,000 tax-free in their Roth IRAs. And they just kept compounding that. So they started small and then they were able to build up as they grew more money in their account. So now fast forward to today, Roth IRA number one has 7 cash flowing properties. On a monthly basis after expenses, they got $7,500 in tax-free cash flow coming in. And then Roth IRA number 2 has about $6,000 in net tax-free cash flow. So combined between their two Roths, they have about $13,000 coming into their Roths tax-free every single month. And if they want, they can turn around and distribute that money 100% tax-free from their Roth IRAs. They're over 59 and a half, so they have the freedom to be able to distribute it 100% tax-free. They don't have to add it to their ordinary income. It doesn't impact their Social Security, provisional income tax. It doesn't impact if they end up in the 3.8% net investment income tax realm. It doesn't impact their tax basis at all because it's in their Roth IRA. And now we look at their consolidated statement. So in addition to the properties that they own, which are generating about $162,000 to $163,000 in net tax-free cash flow, they also are private money lenders. So they are taking their skill set in real estate and they're now applying it to lend money to other house flippers, to other investors that are doing some of the same things that they've been doing over the years. You can't loan money to yourself, of course, but they can loan money to other investors. And they charge between 8 to 12% on their private money loans. And they're generating about $52,000 in interest income, which is all tax-free in their Roth IRAs. Now, keep in mind, interest income, if you made those loans not with an IRA, would be subject to ordinary income tax rates. So let's say they're at the 24% tax bracket and they make $52,000. Well, what's 24% of $52,000? It's about $12,000. They would pay $12,000 in taxes if they did these loans not in their Roth. They do it in their Roth and they save $12,000 in taxes. And folks, that's what I call compounding interest in the absence of taxation. That's why I've been doing this for close to 20 years. This is why I self-direct my accounts. It's ultimately to be more tax efficient and have more money to be able to invest for more opportunities in the future. So their combined net tax-free cash flow is just over $214,000 on an annual basis. Okay, speeding up here, I'm just going to breeze through some of these slides here. I just want to mention that you can convert from traditional to Roth. You can convert from traditional to Roth. We call this a Roth conversion. And you have to be mindful when you do this. You have to think about your tax brackets. And due to the One Big Beautiful Bill making the tax brackets permanent that went into effect in 2018, there could be an interesting opportunity for you to convert from traditional to Roth. You're going to want to team up with your tax professional or CPA. This is an example of that. We have a wage earner with $200,000. They convert $100,000. Prior to 2018, they'd be at the 33% tax bracket. They pay $33,000 in taxes to convert from traditional to Roth. To 2025 and ongoing, really it started in 2028, they'd be at what? They'd be at the 24% tax bracket. So they saved $9,000 in taxes comparatively if they had converted prior to 2018. Laura and some of the other folks that are on the call, you might be thinking about this too as tax planners. Congress just gave us an opportunity. As investors out there, Congress just gave us an opportunity. They just started an agreement, if you will, and said, hey, taxpayer, pay us some money now. Pay us some money now so you never have to pay taxes in the future. And what you want to do is put the pencil to the pad, work with your tax professional when needed, pull up a spreadsheet, and start looking at what I call the Roth equation. Do you want to take that deal or not? Some may not. The first variable of that deal is your return on investment. As your return on investment increases, the mathematical equation is exponential, meaning it gets vertical. Your exponential curve gets more vertical, more money as your return on investment increases because of the compounding effects that are tax-free, of course. The number of years, the more years ahead of you, the better that's going to look. And then, of course, you might want to look at tax rate now versus the future. Now, be careful with the tax rate now versus the future. A lot of people will lead with this. You'll hear people on YouTube and TikTok say this all the time. They'll say things like, well, don't convert when if your tax rate is higher now than later. That doesn't make any sense. They're not factoring in variable number one and variable number two. They're not thinking about the broader scope of the equation. You need to think about that because I have clients that are at a much higher tax rate than what they will be in the future, but because of their return on investment and the number of years ahead of them, they're converting from their traditional to Roth now. And you don't have to do all of it in 1 year. Some people do it over multiple years. And some people even do it asset specific. So when they find a great investment opportunity, they convert when the seed is a little bit smaller so they don't pay it on the much larger crop like Kevin and Cynthia. Private money lending, lending money secured by real estate. This is John, and John loans money secured by real estate. So that's his strategy. This is a deal that he made a $193,000 loan on. It's a 4-bedroom, 1-bath that was converted to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on 5 acres, an old farm property. The house flipper he's made several loans to before. And John partnered his Roth at 80%, his traditional at 16%, and his HSA at 4%. So interestingly, if you follow the rules and the guidelines of 4975 of the Internal Revenue Code, you can actually partner multiple accounts together. You got to be careful how you do this, but there's the capability of doing it. And so he made a $193,000 loan. This deal is going to close at the end of this week. Friday is the closing. And so the property is going to sell, and John is going to get his $193,000 back, plus 14% interest. So that comes out to be about $27,000 in interest. And that's going to be split up 4% back to his HSA, 16% back to his traditional, 80% back to his Roth. And so his HSA just grew by $1,000 and he pays 0% tax. His traditional grows by $4,300 and grows tax deferred. And his Roth grows by $21,000 and some change and he pays 0% tax. Now, let's just do the quick math here. If John did this investment, not in his self-directed accounts, but outside of his self-directed accounts, he would be subject to his ordinary income tax rate, because interest income is subject to your ordinary income tax rate, and you can't depreciate a note. So there's no other tax advantages that you can utilize here. So John's at the 24% tax bracket. So if you can see that on my screen, that's $6,480 in tax savings. So that's $6,480 more that he has for his next investment with his self-directed accounts. In his HSA, if he needs to, he can take the money out and pay for medical. He can reimburse himself for previous year's medical expenses like we talked about. And with his Roth account, I mentioned the Roth IRA layered cake or ordering rules. There's actually ways that John, even under 59.5, can distribute some money from his Roth IRA and pay 0% tax. He can't dip into the earnings, but he can dip into the contributions and he can dip into any amounts that he converted from traditional to Roth that have seasoned for 5 years. That's just the after pictures of the property. Again, property is closing this coming Friday. All right, quickly, solo 401k plan. Lots of benefits to the solo 401k plan. I mentioned before the ability to make much higher contributions to the solo 401k plan. $70,000 when you're under 50, $77,500 when you're 50 and over, $81,250 when you're 60 to 63. And you can get all of that money into the Roth side of the solo 401k plan. A solo 401k plan has a traditional pre-tax side and then it has a Roth side. And so you can get that entire amount into the Roth side if you utilize the right techniques and strategies. One of the things that we talk about is mega backdoor Roth, the ability to be able to make what we call a bucket number 3 post-tax contribution and then convert it over to the Roth side of the solo 401k plan. So if you're working with the right individuals, you can identify ways to get a lot of money into your Roth, which means what? It means more tax-free growth. For those that are real estate investors, if you want to buy real estate with debt, with a non-recourse loan, we call that. If you want to invest in real estate syndications like apartment building, multifamily syndications, self-storage syndications, when you use your IRA, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, or HSA, you're inevitably going to trigger a special tax called unrelated business income tax. A good way to think about it is using an example. Let's say you buy a property for $200,000 and you borrow $100,000 and you're using your, let's say, Roth IRA. Because you're 50% leveraged, you're going to pay taxes on 50% of your net gains. That is your gains after your expenses, including depreciation. So some people just pay the UBIT tax and they're not all that worried about it. But what if you could do debt finance real estate transactions or invest in debt finance real estate syndications and not have UBIT, not have the headache of having to file a 990T tax return and not having to pay the extra taxes? What if you could be more tax optimized? Well, Section 514C9A has an exemption for UBIT as it relates to debt finance real estate, but it's only for qualified plans, which includes solo 401k plans. So what does all this mean? Because a lot of people are like, what in the world is he talking about? 514C9A, Laura, you probably know what I'm talking about, but most people probably don't know what I'm talking about, which is fine. You don't need to know about all that. What I'm telling you is that a solo 401k plan for real estate investors can be a far superior tool in comparison to just an IRA. That doesn't mean that you don't have both. Many clients of mine have both self-directed IRA, like a Roth IRA, and a solo 401k plan. And of course, with a solo 401k plan, you can maintain checkbook control. Funding the solo 401k plan, you can roll over from other retirement accounts. So you see the different types of accounts you can roll into the solo 401k plan. A Roth IRA, you can't roll in, unfortunately. So once a Roth IRA, always a Roth IRA. And then you can make contributions. So John, for example, is 45 years old. He's got an S Corp. He pays himself a $100,000 W-2. And he's getting the full $70,000 contribution in because he's utilizing all components of the solo 401k plan. We call this bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3. You do an employee contribution, an employer profit sharing contribution. And then for those that have a little bit lower income, in order to get the full $70,000 contribution, which is what we call the 415 Internal Revenue Code limit, you do what we call an employee non-deductible contribution. So the conclusion to the solo 401k plan is this, folks. You can contribute significantly larger amounts of money in there. You have a lot of control being able to self-direct into real estate, private equity, other alternative investments. You have the ability to get it all into the Roth side to grow tax-free. If you wanted tax deductions, you could just take the tax deductions. That's entirely up to you. I'm not going to stop you from that. And if you want to do debt finance real estate deals, it's a great opportunity because of the 514c9a UBIT exemptions. All right, I'm going to conclude with that. I mentioned some education. I know I spoke at rapid speed. I know you did not catch everything that I said. I didn't expect you to catch everything that I said. When I do these webinars and presentations, when Cynthia asked me, when Laura asked me to come out and speak, I don't like to speak in hyperboles. I don't like to speak in just theory. I try to get into the gritty execution. I don't mean to overwhelm. What I mean to do is give you a lot of content, because what I hate, and I've been there before, is I hate when I go to a presentation and I really haven't learned anything, or I could have just Googled it, right? Or now, even better, people do what? Chat GPT. Now, I would encourage you to be very careful with Chat GPT when it comes to this type of stuff. I have people all the time, I'm sure you get this, Laura, too. Hey, I did a Chat GPT on this. Well, guess what? It's pulling from the internet, and not everything that the internet says is factual. So we have to be careful with that. But I will say it might be able to get you closer to the finish line. But I like to, again, going back to what I was saying there, I like to give you education that you're not getting from other sources, or you can't get from other sources. So here's a QR code and a link that we'll post in the chat box. I have a full course. It's free. There's no cost to this. There's no upsell. When Cynthia reaches out to me, she wants education. She wants good delivery of content. And I make sure to stand up to that promise that I make to her. And so this is free education. There's video content that dives deeper into everything that I talked about. So if you say, John, I want a masterclass on solo 401k plans, it's in there. I want a masterclass on UBIT, it's in there. So that's why I put this together. You have the QR code in there. I'll try to copy and paste it into the chat box. Technology is not always my strength, but I will do my best to do that.
I got you, John. I got you.
So,
it's in there.
oh, Laura, go ahead, or Cynthia. I'm concluded. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, John, I was saying that I dropped the link in there, so it's in there.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Back to you,
very
Laura.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John. That was so much good information. And I really want to kind of summarize the conversation, because I think John just, summarized the whole summit today with one word, and that is control. Who do you want to give the control, around your finances, around your future, around your wealth, around generational wealth that you're creating? So that is really, I think, the key of this whole conference today is control. Because once you decide where to give control and how to really claim the control of what you're doing, it really gives you so much freedom, and you have so many choices. And I know we could go, I think this conversation can go on hours and hours and hours, because it's just never ending. So thank you so much for still staying on. Let me bring everybody else in that we have. If Brien, I see Brien and James on, we're going to go into the Q&A really quickly. I know there's quite a few different questions for different individuals. So James, if you want to come back on camera, on mic, Brien, as we go through that, I'll go through some questions, John, since you're here. So let's see, there are quite a few different ones. I think you answered the UBIT question. There were quite a few different questions about the UBIT. There are some people asking if their clients, can they get access for free on this resource that you just sent? That was for you, John.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So if their clients, can they have access to the resource?
Oh, yeah, yes. Sorry about that. Yes. So if you, yeah, absolutely. If you're an equity trust client, please, we want you to have that free resource. Absolutely.
Another one for you. And Brian and James, if you're here, if you wanna, I don't see your cameras for some reason. Cynthia, if you wanna bring them on, I just can't see the cameras and the mics on. There's another question for John. John, I already maxed my HSA contribution for 2025 as an individual. My college-age son just lost his health insurance and I need to add him to my policy. How do I determine the maximum HSA contribution amount for our family plan now, since the year is almost over?
Okay, so if your son is added to your policy, if you've had the policy for the entire year, then you add your son. There is something called there's a prorated rule. So you may not be able to do the full 8,300 family policy. You'd have to do the math based on when he's added. But if you had, let's say, your spouse on that plan, so it's not just you, it's you and your spouse, the family policy contribution is actually the same. So it's $8,300. I'm sorry, it's $8,550 for a family policy if you're under the age of 55. If you're 55 and over, it's $9,550. You get $1,000 catch up. Again, if you had a single policy and then added your son, you're going to have to do the math on the pro rata. Interestingly, if you have a son that is, or daughter for that matter, that is on your healthcare policy, if they are not a tax dependent of yours, they can't be a tax dependent. But if they're a healthcare dependent and you qualify for an HSA, interestingly, that son could have their own HSA and do a full family contribution. It's one of the most interesting nuances. I couldn't believe it the first time I read it. I had to verify it with multiple CPAs just to make sure I was reading the code and the IRS regulations properly. I couldn't believe it. So that's a lengthier conversation, but you might be able to get a lot more into that HSA than you actually think. It would be an HSA for your son that he would open, and then you'd have your own HSA.
Yeah, and just to kind of, chime in on that really quickly, from the HSA world, it's not dependent specific. It's really individual or family. That's how the IRS code is. That means, it doesn't matter how many people you add on to it. So that's a really, really great resource. So I'm going to go on. There is another question here. What percentage of a portfolio do you recommend in gold, Bitcoin, others? So I think this one could go for both James and Brian, or either one who wants to take this on.
I mean, I'll start with the Bitcoin allocation, and the only wrong answer is 0. So, typically what I tell people is buy a couple percent, and really do work on it. We have this saying that you leg into a position on Wall Street, and it just means that you put something in your portfolio that is not nominal. It means something, but it's not enough to really hurt you if you decide you don't actually want to build a position in it. And so buying a little bit, getting a 1 or 2% position, it gives you some time to really do work around it, to really understand it, understand what you're owning and why, and how it would fit into your portfolio. By and large, the people I find who do the work and really do get to an understanding and want to grow that position significantly larger. But that's what I would say about Bitcoin. Obviously my position is much larger, and I run a hedge fund that's on a Bitcoin standard, which holds no dollars. It holds Bitcoin in its cash accounts. And then we weigh every investment opportunity against the risk reward of Bitcoin. So, but that's a different vehicle, and that would be something that we recommend as a portion of your overall investment portfolio, not all of it. So, but I know Brian's got some great ideas about the same subject of Bitcoin and gold. So I'll let him rip on that.
Yeah, thanks, James. I think you gave the perfect answer. The only wrong answer is 0. I am not a registered investment advisor. I don't know what anyone's particular circumstances may be, so I cannot recommend any specific investment advice in general, much less percentage holdings. But I would say that I recommend that anybody who is not already invested in the gold sector specifically look at it first as insurance. against the depreciation of your wealth. If you look forward 3, 5, 10 years, you have a very good idea that your dollars are going to buy much less than they are today. And facing that fact, whatever dollars today that you can put in gold, and I think James would argue Bitcoin is a growing store of value as well. But for gold's track record extending hundreds, thousands of years, as long as we can track anything, it has always preserved purchasing power. So whatever dollars you can put today in gold, you are hedging against and protecting yourself against the depreciation of your currency. Everything that's high priced today, an Ivy League education, the S&P 500, any asset that's high priced today, you can go back to the 1930s and you can buy that same asset with the same amount of gold that you could in the 1930s. You cannot say that about the dollar. So it has a proven track record over long sweeps of history of protecting yourself from the depreciation of purchasing power in whatever your currency is. So I encourage people to take that step first and get physical metals and then worry about trying to leverage that trend through some of the associated investments like mining stocks and silver. Silver is a great physical investment too, a great hedge in itself.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so interesting. We just have conversations with people day in and day out about their fears about their investments, the loss of their investments that they had in our practice. And very interestingly, there's no one solution fits all. I know everybody wants a formula and everybody's coming with questions on, tell me the percentage of this and that. And what we have seen, even though like you're looking at trends and, I think all of you have provided different angles on the investment arena. There's no one formula that fits a family's needs or a specific, scenario. So my encouragement is, again, as a tax strategist, is really there's no bad investments, right? In the sense of, okay, how much should I put in gold? How much should I put in a Roth IRA? How much should I put in my personal name, right? Each one of these are really, really good. And you have to decide who do you want to relinquish your control? Like, do you want your Roth IRA? Do you want to hold them at home? People cannot hold assets at home. So there's all the solutions are great solutions. You have to decide which one really applies to you. And we do have another question. I think the HSA kind of rocked people's minds a little bit because we have a lot of questions about HSAs, John. So another question for you. Can I move my HSA account from a current employer, or do I have to wait until I leave the company? Which is the same for the 401ks, but that's a really valid question that we see a lot.
Yeah, that's a great question because everyone's used to a 401k. You work for the company, you got handcuffs on, you can't move it. Interestingly, sometimes there are ways to roll over a 401k while you're still working, even under 59 and a half. It's called an in-service withdrawal. Now, you're not going to be able to take out all of your money. It's just going to be what the company matched you. But to answer the question on HSA, HSA is portable at any time. So the company that you're working for, the healthcare policy provider, they can't tie you to one specific custodian or bank to hold your HSA with. So you can stay employed with that company. You don't have to change your healthcare policy. All you're doing is what we call a trustee to trustee transfer. So you're transferring your HSA from, let's say, Optum Bank or HSA Bank or wherever it's at to Equity Trust in a self-directed HSA. And there's no taxes or penalties. In fact, what some clients do is they keep their HSA with their current provider because they're actually making contributions through payroll deferral. And then they just transfer a portion of it into the self-directed HSA to be able to use that for their private investments that they want to make.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So if you didn't get the answers, all accounts are good accounts. So, a self-directed IRA is a great account to have. Just make sure that you follow the rules and that, just follow the control group rules and all of that. So another question here, I think this one is for James. I'm curious about your perspective on ISO 20022, crypto like XRP, Hedera, Algo, XDC, institutional adoption, etc.
Not sure.
I don't know what that means. So I hope you do know what that means.
I'm not sure I understand the question. What is it?
I'm curious about your perspective on ISO 20022 crypto, like XRP, Hedera, Algo.
I look, um, I would I would say this. I don't identify as a Bitcoin maxi, but it's the only cryptocurrency that I own. I do not trust any of the others. I treat Bitcoin as an asset and as a protocol that's growing rapidly that I trust. I just don't trust any of the other protocols. They're too centralized and they have too much risk with execution, and I don't have a way that I can handicap that risk like you would be able to with an Amazon or a Microsoft or an Apple or something like that. They could issue more coins that could change the protocol. You just don't have control over that. So I don't trust them, but that's me, and I stay away from them.
Yeah, thank you, James. Another question I think for Brien is, how would you invest in copper?
As one of the other attendees noted, there are some copper miner ETFs. One person mentioned, John mentioned COPX is one. Another one run by Sprott is COPP. You can invest in individual copper miners like Freeport McMoran. If you want to get more on the or further down the risk curve and get into more of the juniors, again, do your homework. This is not appropriate for everyone, but a couple of the copper explorers that are in our gold newsletter portfolio are Gladiator Metals. That's GLAD on the Canadian Venture Exchange. And another one is, let me see. I guess I would just stick with that one, Gladiator, looking at these. I really like Gladiator. They're exploring. They've got what looks to be a sizable resource right now and are still getting great results along a long trend.
Yeah. So again, for more on that, I think the best way is to just subscribe to your gold newsletter. They can find a lot of information ongoingly and all of that. So we have more questions here. Another one for John. If you are self-employed, can you do an HSA or some form of one? Again, HSAs are the hot topic today. It looks like, John, which I didn't believe that's going to be so, but I think people don't know about it. This says that they just don't know what they can do with the HSAs.
Yeah, absolutely. So HSA, if they're self-employed, the requirements to contribute to an HSA are that you have a high deductible healthcare plan. So if you don't have an HSA now, in order to fund an HSA, establish and fund, you have to have a high deductible healthcare plan. And the best way to find out whether you do or don't is to talk to your healthcare policy provider. There are guidelines, IRAs guidelines in terms of what qualifies and what doesn't. And trying to read through all of that is not going to be worth your time. The best thing to do is go right to your healthcare policy provider and ask, is this policy eligible for an HSA? And they'll tell you whether it is or isn't. And I always like to say, don't allow the HSA tail to wag the medical dog. I have clients, for example, that are retired military that have amazing health care, and they never had an HSA because there's no reason for them to have it. So, don't go changing your healthcare policy just to have an HSA. But if you're in a situation where you already have an HSA with cash in it, instead of spending it, you can consider self-directing it to compound tax-free, and then you can reimburse yourself in the future, you can reimburse yourself for healthcare expenses that you, let's say, incur today. That's what I call that medical bill stacking. So ultimately, to conclude on that question, I'll mention that if you have an HSA now with cash in it, and then let's say you no longer have a high deductible healthcare plan, can you still grow the HSA tax-free? Of course. Can you still use the HSA tax-free for medical? Of course. And that's a really strong argument, especially for those that maybe it doesn't work for them, but they have kids that are just entering the job workforce and they're young and they don't have many healthcare expenses. And so naturally, what do? keep your premium low, and elect for the high deductible plan. Some companies don't even allow you to do anything other than a high deductible health insurance plan. And then you have an HSA. And sometimes employers even will put some money in there for them. So if it's not for you, maybe it's for your kids so that they can start getting themselves set up for tax-free growth going forward.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. So we always tell people, you don't make an investment or you don't make decisions just for one benefit, right? So a lot of people want the tax write-off because everybody likes a tax write-off, but you may not need a tax write-off this year, right? So just make sure that you make this is not like advice, like everybody mentioned this. This is just like illustration of what's possible. So just take it, go to your advisor, go speak with your, financial advisor, your tax strategist, your CPA, whoever you need to ask, your insurance company, to make sure you make the right decision. Another one that comes really in the same area: what tax saving strategies are available for high earning W-2 filer filing jointly with one spouse not working, who has already maxed out the 401k limit and does not have access to HSA and FSA. And again, I think this one is a little bit beyond the scope, but you can do all of these. Like all of the tools mentioned, you can do Bitcoin and how to use Bitcoin. Again, you could use Bitcoin it has a really, really great benefit. I love Bitcoin in a Roth IRA and outside a Roth IRA. Why? Because you can use all the losses, right? You harvest every single loss that you have and you go buy it back the next day. There's so many different things you can do. You can buy gold. You can do self-directed IRAs. You can do all of it. So I'll let you answer that. And I know if you're here today and you still have questions, we are holding a masterclass on the, One Big Beautiful Bill next week. If you want to join that, it's free. It's educational again. I know it's a lot of education for you around the holiday, but if you want to join us, again, that's going to be more on the business owner side. What you can do, join us for that. But if any one of you have any other tools that you want to recommend to people, how can they use, the investments that you mentioned in a more tax efficient way? If you have anything else to add, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I'll add, Laura. It's a really good question. And you being a tax planner yourself, I'm sure you got ideas that are going through your head. I'm not a CPA or a tax planner, but being a real estate investor and entrepreneur myself, I have all sorts of ideas that I want to start talking about, but I want to be careful. Here's what I'll say with respect to staying in my lane of self-directed IRAs, 401ks. You have a 401k at your job, a W-2. You can max out that contribution, which if you're under 50, it's $23,500. When you're 50 and over, it's $31,000, and get your company match. Interestingly, the way the tax code has an interesting avenue or opportunity for you to be able to contribute more than that 70,000 or 77,500 limit that I talked about. And it's all based on if you work for a W-2, you work for a company, W-2, I'm just saying, and you do your employee contribution. You do your employee contribution to that plan, which you're not the business owner. Assuming you're not the business owner, you're fine. You make the contribution. You used up your employee contribution of $23,500. If you have a side business, let's say if you have a side business doing consulting, whatever it may be, and you have enough income, you could actually contribute a totally separate, it follows a totally separate set. And so you can do a full $70,000 contribution over here. So we call those 415 limits. So your 415 limit is unique to the employer, which is $70,000 when you're under the age of 50. So you can do your 23.5 with your W-2. And then over here in your side business, providing that you have enough self-employment taxable earnings, you could do what's called a voluntary post-tax contribution of an entire $70,000. I'll give you an example. I'm working with an anesthesiologist right now, pretty much has the same problem that you're talking about. And she works a W-2, if you will, for a hospital, and she's making good income. She's got a 401k there, and she's putting $23,500 in there. She's under 50. She's 44 years old. Separate, she's an independent contractor. So she gets 1099 NEC income for going to different hospitals and doing basically side work as an anesthesiologist, right? And she's got pretty good income there. So what we're doing is we're helping her make an entire $70,000 contribution to her solo 401k plan. So she's got 23.5 going in over here, 70,000 going in over here. The combined amount is far more than 70,000. And she can do that because, again, she's self-employed over here and then has the company that she's working at over here. Now, some people say, well, I want deductions. Okay, well, you can do what's called a profit sharing contribution to the solo 401k plan. If the spouse isn't working, but they set up their own side business, they could have a solo 401k plan, or the husband and wife together. The one thing that, Laura, you mentioned before that's important, control group rules. You do have to understand that if you have W-2 employees in your current business or any businesses that you have a certain ownership interest of, you have to offer a 401k benefit to your employees, meaning you can't have a solo 401k plan. So you do need to spend some time being thoughtful as a business owner and as an entrepreneur around the rules and how to properly set up these different types of plans, primarily a solo 401k plan.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap on that, so this educational webinar here is just to open up your mind. Now, you're going to have to do some homework. Again, Tanisha showed you how you can use ChatGPT, use it at your own discretion. Just make sure that you understand, use the right people to give you the correct information that is really legit, right? Don't go and, follow a TikTok trend with your money. So just make sure you validate, triple validate the choices that you make. Another question that we have here, what are some reputable companies to purchase physical gold and silver? I think that's for Brien. Oh, you muted.
Okay, I need to unmute.
Yeah.
There are lots, and it's vitally important to have a gold and bullion dealer that you trust. Again, in our free special report, The Investor's Guide to Gold and Bullion, that you can get from goldnewsletter.com, you can get our list of the gold dealers, metal dealers that we know very closely and trust. I like American Gold Exchange for one, and Coin Agent for another. Two friends of mine that have been in the business for decades. So again, you can get that at goldnewsletter.com, but if you look up American Gold Exchange and or Coin Agent, you'll find two of our highly recommended dealers.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Brien. I'll go faster here. We have quite a few different questions and I'm trying to get to all of them if we can. As a retail investor, better to hold the coins or the ETF?
As a what investor? Retail?
Retail.
Well, I mean, what's your comfort level and on technology, and are you comfortable with self-sovereignty? Meaning, can you take the Bitcoin off exchange and put it into cold storage? Meaning that it's up to you. If you lose your seed phrase and you lose your basically your password, then you lost your money. So, for the vast majority of retail investors, it's far easier just to own the ETF and much, much lower risk. The risk is not zero that it could be, that the custodian could fail. But if you're with somebody like BlackRock or Fidelity or Bitwise, I think you're in pretty good shape. So for the vast majority of individuals, I recommend at first just buying the ETF. Once you get very comfortable with it, you can start buying Bitcoin itself and storing it yourself. But that's kind of where I would start.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And again, lots of comments about the recording. I think Cynthia said everything is recorded. So we trust Cynthia that everything is recorded and everybody gets a replay on this. So that's that. At what point will one be able to use gold, silver, Bitcoin to make everyday purchases?
Brien, you want to talk about gold and silver?
Well, there are a number of credit cards backed by gold out there right now. You can probably just Google those. It's still somewhat unproven, and they're not being backed by large financial institutions yet. So I don't recommend any specifically. I don't not recommend them either. I just don't know enough about the people involved to put my name behind them. But you can Google that and find gold-backed credit cards right now. And now over to you, James.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's obviously cumbersome to pay for things in gold and silver at this. They've been around as stores of value for thousands of years, and that's their use case primarily. You can't divide gold into usable small purchases. It's not really feasible. So, but tremendous store value and tremendous amount of confidence in it as a store of value for many, 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 many years. So, but that's different than what we're talking about. Bitcoin is still being adopted as a store of value. I think it's a long way off until we use it for everyday purchases. You're just not going to just walk down the street and buy coffee with it. I still try to get contractors and people who are doing work for me or whatever to take their tips in Bitcoin. When I use Lyft or Uber or whatever, just, hey, can I tip you in Bitcoin, and try to get them to start adopting it. It's just a fun little way for them to learn about it. But I do think we're a number of years away from that. It's going to take a long time before Bitcoin is fully adopted as a store of value, and then it migrates into, a means of exchange at some point. But we're a ways off.
Mm-hmm. So is it safe to say that you would probably recommend using it, for example, if you're running a business? Again, there's different types of businesses to accept payments in Bitcoin. Would that be kind of the next step to kind of increase that awareness that you do that? And that could be a separate conversation of what do you do?
Yeah. Look, like I talked about the SAB 122, repealing SAB 121 is going to, it's banks, all the big banks are working on their crypto and Bitcoin products now, and they're going to integrate them. And so it just makes it easier for you to have and hold and use it. But make no mistake, Visa has an absolute stranglehold on payment processing, and they're expensive. So if as more and more smaller stores and single stores pick up Bitcoin, and start using it and themselves and start accepting it, you've seen like Steak and Shake is taking it, and they've seen a rise in commerce because of Bitcoiners going to use their Bitcoin to actually use it and to promote it. So I think early on you'll see a rise in customers if you adopt Bitcoin, and later on it'll just be accepted everywhere. But again, like I said, it's just a ways off.
Yeah, I think the tracking, we still have trouble with our high net worth individuals to give us the tracking if they sell crypto, gold, and silver, because they might have had it for 20 years and they don't have basis. And I think tracking becomes really, really difficult. So whatever you do, just make sure that you track your moves, especially financial moves. When you buy, when you sell assets, make sure that you keep that record, because it comes really handy when you're trying to harvest some losses or you have some gains that you want to really cash in. Really, really important that you track that. Again, it probably, if you do it in a Roth IRA, I would assume that is tracked inside the IRAs or the self-directed IRAs. So you kind of take something off your shoulder. And again, it comes back to control, which I'm going to come and ask you another question, John. There's lots of questions here. I'm trying to get fast through them, but we probably will not get through all of them. I'll just pick a few more. It says here, should I open a 401k plan with my W-2, or the Roth is okay with equity trust?
I would say I always start with, if you have the cash to be able to put away into retirement accounts. So you always have to start there, because if you don't have enough cash to put away into retirement accounts and live on, then that's not going to work, obviously. So I want to be respectful of that. Everyone's different on the call. But if I'm working with someone that says, I don't need the cash, it's just sitting in a savings account, earning little to no interest. I have, inflation just eating away at it every year. Oh, by the way, I got to pay taxes on the interest that I get, right? It was interesting how everybody was making all this money on their bank accounts, and then all of a sudden they got these 1099s from their bank. And then they go to their tax preparer and they're like, what do I do with this? Well, we got to pay taxes on it at your ordinary income tax rates. And then all of a sudden that interest that they got, all of a sudden it seems to feel a little bit different, right? So anyways, minor diversion. The way I look at it is, if the money is sitting in a savings account, why not instead put that away into a retirement account? And if you have access to a 401k at work and you can contribute and get a match, why not do that? Put the maximum amount you can in to get the maximum match. And then once you do that, cascade into a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. If you are too high of an income earner, there's something called modified adjusted gross income limits. You can get to a point where you make too much money and you can't contribute to a Roth IRA, so you have to do a backdoor Roth. Either way, you can contribute to your IRA in addition to your 401k. A lot of people ask me, do I have to select from one of the two? Or if I'm contributing to a 401k at work, does that exclude me from contributing to an IRA? The answer is absolutely not. IRAs were sort of designed by Congress to be a supplement to retirement. So you can contribute to the 401k and max out your IRA. I would also add in there is if you have a self-employed business or you're a self-employed person, you got a side business, let's say, you could also look at having a solo 401k plan, like I talked about a few moments ago, and get as much money in there as well. And then, of course, you got the HSA to put as much money away. And the way I always look at it is this, and I'll wrap it up with this comment. A lot of people in America have spent a lot of years hoarding their cash. They want the cash. They want it sitting in a bank account because they can touch it, feel it, get access to it anytime they want. And that's why the savings rates within retirement accounts have been, I'll say, much more poor than they should be. They should be higher. They're pretty good. And over the last few years, we've seen an interesting uptick. But the reality is people aren't putting enough money away because they think that they put the money away and they throw away the key and they can't touch the money. But there's all different ways to access your retirement money even early. There's things such as 72T withdrawals from traditional accounts. There's the Roth ordering rules where you can take money out prior to 59 and a half. You can borrow against a 401k up to 50,000, not to exceed 50%. There's all sorts of ways that you can actually get access to the money if you have an emergency situation. And if you have a heavy financial burden, you can actually take withdrawals early and avoid the 10% penalty. This is all under Section 72T of the Internal Revenue Code that has all the exceptions to the 10% premature withdrawal penalty. So, not to bore everybody, let me really wrap it up here. Put every dollar away that you can, into retirement accounts, because I don't see how it's going to harm you. I don't think that's advice. If anybody tells me it's advice, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll say it's not advice.
Yeah, that's a good disclaimer right there. We don't have an attorney on the line. She is not here. So I think a lot of the questions that people have, I think it comes from the questions they ask. They're scared to put the cash in because of the loss of investment, and retirement somehow feels more secure for them. And what I'll tell you is what we tell our high net worth individuals, our business owners, is that you got to do your retirement analysis. If you don't have somebody doing it for you, and it's not just financial analysis, so from a tax, because all the questions kind of tie into the tax perspective on this, retirement analysis, you're looking at, the economic benefit of the investment that you're putting in. Could that be gold? Could that be silver, Bitcoin, real estate? There's conversation about the ROBs. Again, this is beyond the scope of what we have today. But bottom line is what you want to know is, what am I willing to absorb when I want to retire? Do I want RMDs, which kind of come with their own set of rules? Do I want Roth IRAs? What do I actually want? And having a goal, and you get to design what you want with the structure and with the investments that you put your money in. And there's no bad solution. There's just the right solution for you for right now or for your future and your family. So I'll leave it with that. Again, next week, if you want to join us, it's a free event. We're going to have a lot more tax conversation and just go a little bit more into tax. And probably we should do one event on just retirement, because there's just so many questions on retirement, and it's such a hot topic because everybody's putting, all these investments that feel more riskier for them. They feel safer somehow if they put in a retirement account. And I think that's a great conversation. Just tells us where the people have their risk level and the tolerance, where to put the money. And again, self-directed gives you that option, which is great. I'll come with a couple more questions and we're going to wrap it up. James, there's just so many questions for you. I don't even know. Guys, please subscribe to the newsletter. If Cynthia, if you can put it back in the chat again, the best way is to contact James. Is there any other way they can contact you? There's a lot of questions about Bitcoin.
Yeah. I try to get to all the questions in those threads on the newsletter. And then, of course, I mean, if you're interested in talking to us about the fund, then bitcoinopportunity.fund, you can just put your information there. We can talk to you about that. But I'm on Twitter. You can answer my questions or my posts there, and that's easy.
Yeah. I do have one more question this is going to be the last question that I pick up for James. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do you think Larry Fink will create a fork in the BTC network? Will he dump his 5% strategy stock to herd the stock to benefit BlackRock? Will he or others be able to taint the BTC supply or coding BTC as good or bad BTC?
Okay. So first of all, BlackRock doesn't own BTC. The individual investors that are the customers of BlackRock own BTC. So that's number one. He can't just decide that he wants to fork, Bitcoin. I mean, he could, but it would be unsuccessful, because the nodes would just say, okay, have fun that you're going to go ahead and have your own fork. But the real Bitcoin network is over here, and all the nodes, the decentralized nodes govern that. That's what we talked about in my presentation today. That's why, it's nation state resistant, which puts Larry Fink far, far, far below that. Another part of that question was, what was the third part of it where he could?
I think I dismissed the question. Let me see.
Well, I don't know. I can't remember what the third part was.
Let me go to it. If I can find it. Will he or the others be able to taint the BTC supply by coding BTC as good or bad BTC?
Yeah. No, I mean, that part that goes back to the original part of it. He doesn't own the Bitcoin. The underlying customers own it. So no, I don't see that. Now, what his intentions are, I don't know. But my longtime experience on Wall Street tells me that BlackRock likes Bitcoin because it's a great product, and they're going to make money off it, and they're making tremendous amounts of money off it with this ETF. It's a product for them. Whether he truly believes in it, I don't know. He seems to really be a believer and to have embraced it. But look, BlackRock it's a large institution, and they're offering something for customers. That's what it is.
Yeah. Thank you so much, James. Again, there's so many questions for James. I don't think it's possible to go through all of them. I just picked up a few. So again, just connect with James. I think Cynthia posted in the chat, and what ways you can connect with him, and subscribe to the newsletter as well. There was another question here that I wanted to pick up. Would investing in energy be a good way to go, since AI will be needing a lot of energy use, especially since the present administration stands on AI? Which I'll make a comment on this first. As a tax advisor, tax strategist, I have never seen such a bold move on energy with the One Big Beautiful Bill. We have people investing so much money in solar, and I don't think solar is bad, but it's gone, right? So there's, obviously, big political shifts when it comes to energy and where we're heading towards with this administration. There's no good or bad administration from a tax perspective. They're just a new administration that comes with new laws. So we have to take advantage of what we have at hand now. What the next administration is going to do, we don't know. So, when it comes to energy, again, the investment in energy, you're looking at the economic benefit, and I'll let you pick up. I don't know, Brien, you want to pick this one up. But from a tax perspective, the energy investments have always given us advantages. Either way you shape it, we had advantages. Now, laws come and tax laws go. So there's some shifts in the energy tax law, which again, we will cover in a little bit more depth next week if you want to come and join us. But Brien, what say you about that?
Yeah, everything that we had been expecting for years as far as a demand curve for commodities also affects energy. And then over the last year, we now have the AI data centers added to that. And at the high end of those estimations, they equal everything we were throwing on top of the demand curve before. So it's an even more dramatic and compelling story right now. And I guess it depends on where you would want to invest in energy. I think uranium is going to be absolutely a necessity. I think the supply-demand fundamentals for uranium are irrefutable and irresistible, and it's just a matter of time before they truly impact the uranium price. A lot of ways to invest in uranium. We cover that in our reports as well and at Gold Newsletter, but there are some ETFs or trusts out there that invest directly in uranium. I recommend the Sprott vehicles for that, the Sprott Physical Bullion, Physical Uranium Mining Trust. You can go to the Sprott website and find those. But it is one of the ways that I would play this new energy renaissance that we have facing us.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think we're going to just wrap it up with just final comments and any advice they want to give. There's just so many questions that people have, very specific questions. And if you have specific questions, what do I do this? Like, how do I, get my account set up? What's the minimum age? Like you have very, very specific questions. I really encourage you to reach out to the people. Again, no one is trying to force anything down your throat. There's just like, you want to learn, and this is an opportunity for you to learn from experts that have been doing this for so many years, and they have a great portfolio to back it up. So I really encourage you to really take advantage of the resources we have. I'll just pass it on to each one of you with kind of final words where people can find you. And I really encourage you to take advantage of these as well. So John, I'll start with you. If you have any final words, there's lots of questions. There's no way we can cover it all. So, if they want to talk to you, they have the links, they have the course, right? Any other final words for our crowd today?
That's great. The link with the education, easy to find us online. Just search Equity Trust. We have all sorts of videos and other content. And I know all this information. I started studying taxes and self-directed IRAs and then crypto. And there are areas that, for example, like crypto. I'm fairly new to crypto in terms of investing in that particular class. And so this is the second time I've been on a call with James, and I try to pay very special close attention to that. And I know Brien mentioned a newsletter as well. I subscribe to a lot of different investor newsletters and tax newsletters that have been really, really helpful. And I do have to pay for that, of course. And that's part of it. You can get a lot of free information out there now, but the stuff that I'll say, is really the granular that you need to know, usually costs money. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. People develop their individual expertise areas and they share that, and there's a cost for that. Someone asked the question about, looking for someone that can give tax advice and do real tax planning. And what I'll say is you have to be prepared to pay for it. And those fees can vary, but it's not tax preparation. If you go to your tax preparer and you're just paying them to do tax preparation, they're going to do what? They're just going to prepare your taxes. They're going to take the information. They're going to enter the data. They're going to review it, make sure that's as accurate as they can, and then it gets submitted. And that's the reality of it. And unfortunately, I've worked with a lot of people over the years that get frustrated by that. Well, that's what you're paying for. If you want real forward-thinking tax planning and strategy and discussion and all of that, you pay for that. So I just wanted to mention that because I saw someone ask that question, but don't get overwhelmed by it. It is a lot. I appreciate you, Laura, doing a whole entire session on the One Big Beautiful Bill. There is a lot in that, and there's a ton of opportunity that I see for entrepreneurs and business owners, whether you're buying a business, selling a business, real estate, bonus depreciation. There's so many major opportunities in there. And then some of the things that James talked about around legislation within the crypto space, the Genius Act. I mean, there's so much there for people to dial into, but don't get overwhelmed. Try to focus on a few different areas that make sense for you and really go, I think, deep into those areas, whether it's from an investment perspective, tax perspective, or both. And the odds of you being successful will be that much greater. I can't guarantee success, right? We don't do that, but the odds will be better. So I'll stop at that point. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And that was such a nice recap. So, I always like to advise, or at least our people, and again, we're saying advice, but it's not advice. Is find what's your goal, what's your immediate goal, right? If your goal right now is to just move the cash that's sitting in a savings account or in a CD or in a bond and just diversify, just look for the options to diversify. If your goal is, I'm paying 100,000 in taxes, or I have all these investments, I can't write off anything. Just find what's your most immediate goal, and just find the proper resources to go. Use the free resources like education events like this, and then just find the right people to go and talk to, and find out, who can assist you in what you do, right? So I think that's that. Brien, any final words that you have for our crowd today, where it comes, I think they're scared to put money in gold. A lot of people have ideas about gold. It's just the mindset is there. So can you kind of reframe the mindset of the new gold generation that's coming up right now? What are we seeing?
Yeah, I think anybody that is afraid of investing in gold is looking at it as a speculation. And again, I look at the physical metals as insurance and something that you should be afraid to not have. You know what's going to happen. Unlike insurance on your home, you have home insurance, but you don't really expect, I would hope not, your home to catch on fire or to flood. But insuring your wealth against dollar depreciation, that's insuring against something you know is going to happen. Every dollar that you have sitting there idly in your bank account for the next 5 years is going to be buying a whole lot less in 5 years than it is right now. Gold has historically protected from that type of depreciation. Silver as well. So I think the physical metals are investments, hedges, insurance that you should have. And I think, playing off what John said, I think education is the key. Don't just listen to anyone, do your research. A lot of these markets are inefficient, and that's your advantage. You can't outwork other people. You can learn about ways to outperform. For us at goldnewsletter.com, you can get our investor's guide to gold and silver. Should answer most of your questions and be a great first step to learning about the sector. And if you go to my annual conference, November 2nd to 5th, here in New Orleans, you can find out more about that at neworleansconference.com. And I would urge you to do that. But again, education is the key.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brien. James, any final words for our crowd today?
Yeah, I mean, look, I talked a lot about Bitcoin and the confidence I have in it, but for those who are new to it, I was in your spot just 5 years ago, and I dismissed it over and over and over again as a professional investor. I don't know if I was mentally lazy or I just could not conceive of something that was truly groundbreaking in technological advancement the way that it is, and it's not. It just solves something that we have not been unable to solve until now, and that's the beauty of it. So, and that's why it's different. It's different from all the other cryptocurrencies, and that's why I believe in it. So, just do the work, just like both John and Brien just said. Just do the work. Take it piece by piece. There's a lot of information. There was a lot of information here today between. I didn't see some of the other presentations, but between John, Brien, and me, we threw a lot at you. Take your time, read through it carefully, ask the questions. There are no stupid questions about this stuff. And you can maximize your wealth and the position that you're in using some of the strategies that both John and Brien put out there. You can augment it with using strategies I'm talking about. But again, every individual is different, and talk to an advisor. If your advisor just outright dismisses any of this stuff, then they're the wrong advisor. You need to speak with somebody who will give you the full answers and know this stuff and research it themselves as well. So, but yeah, it's not that it's really not that complicated. It's as far as Bitcoin goes, this is an asset that's being adopted. Just like gold had its massively, volatile periods during adoption phases, it's the same thing. And it's going to take some time. You had large drawdowns in technologies that have been adopted before, so it's not anything new. So I would say take a long-term view. Um, excuse me. Just leg into it and do your research and get to know it. And like Cynthia and Laura said, I have a newsletter. It's called The Informationist. It's just at jameslavish.com. There's a free version, and the paid version gets you, the free version gets you one newsletter each month, and then the paid version gets you all of them every single Sunday. So, and if you are interested in augmenting your total portfolio with Bitcoin and you're accredited, then you can get a hold of us at bitcoinopportunity.fund. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you. So, and see if it's right. It's not right for everybody. So.
Yeah, which I think is such a great final word to everyone. All the solutions are great, and thank you so much, Cynthia. Again, I just came here as a host, as a neutral party. We see only the back end of this, and people invest, and then they think about the tax impact. So all the investments are good investments if you're doing it in the right vehicle. That could be in one of the retirement accounts. It could be just in a separate private account. It could be in your irrevocable trust. It can be in so many different places that you can do it. Right. We have people from outside the United States here on the call. So if you're a multinational, again, that would be a conversation, because, you just have to know what's like what kind of can is going to hold your investment. So choose the right vehicles to invest in, and that really comes between you and your advisor. So pick your right advisors. Again, we're going to have that conversation next week. If you want to tackle some of the tax implications, the tax nuances, what these laws are giving you an opportunity, you can come. It's a free event. You can come with questions. I'll reserve about an hour of questions on that. Tax is going to have a lot of questions in and out. So I want to say thank you so much to each one of you, that you brought so much wealth of knowledge for the people. And I know Cynthia had this as a passion project, that she really wanted the people to know and to be informed of what's happening. And there were great resources. Today you covered, the AI and the labor market shifts. We talked about the commodities right now with Brien, kind of giving us like really another way to hedge, in what we're seeing in the trends coming up. And again, James picked up again the Bitcoin, and it never stops to surprise us. We say it's going to stop, sky's falling, and it's not falling. So I think it's here to stay. And then John just brought and gave us another angle of how you can do this very efficiently, and you can retire on your own terms. And this is everybody's dream, to retire tax-free, and you can go anywhere you want in the world. So I think all of this together, Cynthia brought a great lineup of speakers and educational content. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for doing this. Thank you for joining us today. Cynthia will be sending out the emails with all the goodies. I know everybody's asking about, where do I go? Where do I get this? Connect with the people and just take it to the next level for where you are right now. Just do what feels good for you in the next step in your journey, financial journey. So there's no wrong step. Just make one step that would make an impact for you. So thank you so much, everyone. We're going to wrap it up, and you have a great holiday, Labor Day weekend. It is my birthday on Labor Day. I'm a Labor Day baby, and I will celebrate that Labor Day. So very good, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and I wish you a really good rest of the week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.